Hey everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to TPUSA Live. I'm John Root, sitting next to the Spillover host, the politics host, the chicken nugget queen,
That's
the
me.
Pop culture princess.
Wow.
Any other names you got?
Best intro I've ever gotten. Well, my dad calls me Grimace because when I was little, I would refuse to wear any color besides purple, which I'm kind of in that zone today. So
Yeah,
there you
purple,
go.
pinkish, yeah.
Yeah, you know Grimace is the big purple thing from McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Grimace, an icon.
There's some people in this office that might not remember that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, millennial, 90 kids know, you know.
Oh yeah, we know. It's kind of like N64. We had that discussion the other day.
Yes, what's an N64? I said, a gun.
And there was people around the office. Well, an N64, for those that don't know, it's a Nintendo 64, one of the best gaming systems ever. We asked people around the office and they said, is that a mask?
Oh yeah, N95, N64,
Oh my
you know?
gosh, it's out of control. But coming up next, we've got Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. He's comparing the trucker protests compared to CHAZ. And it's going to be a great breakdown there because there's a lot of people that kind of celebrated CHAZ. And then now the truckers, according to Prime Minister Trudeau, is a violent group that is trying to take out the government.
I saw yesterday on the Canadian news, they interviewed these women on the street that were upset about the truckers. And they were like, it was a big deal and it was scary, but we went up and gave a thumbs down to the truckers. And that was really hard to do, but we did it. And I was like, really? That's Canada for you.
Unbelievable. And then also Speaker Pelosi, she is telling our Olympians to stay silent because they could be in danger. We're going to break that down on our show.
I have a lot to say about
on
that.
the couch too. Me too. We won't give you our take, but Jack's got a great take on that as well. Also, the Biden administration refuses to provide evidence of alleged Russia threats. Interesting stuff. It's going to be a great show on Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. After that, sit on the couch with Alex Clark. We also got Isabel Brown, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. We have to talk about the Olympics. So the Olympics start today. Tonight, if you want to, you probably shouldn't, watch the opening ceremonies.
Watch it.
And we're going to tell you all about what Speaker Pelosi is saying. And then I know I've talked about it a lot on Breakaway about how we should be viewing this, where should you be getting your information, and the fact that there's no reason at all that the Olympics should be held in communist China.
They had a Uyghur Muslim start the ceremony.
Yeah.
Just a big, huge slap in the face to America. Just a ha-ha moment. It's absolutely disgusting.
Also, we're going to have a great conversation about Joe Rogan as well. For
Okay.
some reason, the left, he's public enemy #1. But I don't think anybody has done what he's done in the media space to make sure that voices are heard, conversations are had. And he's telling people, it's up to you to decide. I'm just having conversations. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just providing a platform 3 hours long for whoever wants to chat.
I actually have a hot take surrounding the Spotify Joe Rogan stuff if you want to get into it later.
I would love to get into it
Because
later.
I don't know if you've seen, but all in the last 24 hours, every single conservative on Twitter has been praising Spotify's president for the latest statement.
Yeah.
Did you see? Saying
Yeah.
like we believe in free speech and all this. And I actually think conservatives are wrong. So I
Wow.
can explain that later. But I feel like I'm out on an island here and I'm the only conservative that disagrees with this. But we can talk about that in the show.
Well, you have a little background in a skirmish with Spotify that people should
That's
hear about
true.
again.
I forgot about that, actually.
I
I
need to
do
remind
have
you.
personal experience with Spotify discriminating against free speech. So, yes, we will talk about that. See, look at that. Good looking out, John Root.
Hey, I got you. And Alex Clark, we're going to get a lot of you today. You got a new episode of Spillover. What's that about?
I do. I actually had a bunch of CUTESERVATIVES on to share their own crazy personal stories. One girl who left a cult, another girl who's a pro-life activist who was actually punched in the face by a pro-abortion activist on the steps of the Supreme Court. We had a fellow Turning Point employee, actually, who accidentally committed accidental manslaughter. Really sad story.
Oh my
And
goodness.
just how that affected her life and how she was able to overcome that. So very interesting, real stories from real CUTESERVATIVES on the Spillover today.
And then you got a brand new episode of Politics right after that, too. You're talking about Hailey Bieber. She's zipping her lips. What's going on there?
Hailey Bieber says she doesn't ever want to talk about her personal life or her marriage to Justin Bieber again, but now that some videos have kind of resurfaced, I almost wonder if Justin is a little bit of a emotionally manipulative husband.
My goodness.
Yeah,
That's
pretty juicy.
That's going to be a heck of a show. But hey, coming up next, we got Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec. A lot of good stuff there. Alex and I will see you on the couch very soon.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. Today's top stories: Black Lives Matter. You remember them, right? The Black Lives Matter organization. They've shut down funding in the entire state of California amid a massive financial scandal. How is this not the lead news on every conservative outlet? Well, it's going to be the lead news here. Next, the Biden administration is refusing to provide evidence of alleged Russian threats, and you've got to see these videos. Third, Speaker Pelosi, live on video, tells US Olympians to not speak out against the CCP during the Beijing Olympics. And then finally, we're going to do a little discussion about the trucker uprising versus the CHAZ and talk about the differences, because some people are trying to compare the two. All this and more ahead, Human Events Daily. This is one of those stories where you look at it and you say, well, come on now, that can't be true. That's too on the nose. But it is. Black Lives Matter, the organization, has shut down online funding in California and Washington states following Attorney General warnings in those states. This is from the California Globe. This is not like, this isn't humanevents.com. This isn't, turningpointusa.com. This is the California Globe reporting this. The activist group Black Lives Matter shut down all online funding Wednesday night due to an ongoing California Department of Justice warning that the group may lose their tax-exempt status if they don't file delinquent proper tax reforms and fees by the end of March. According to this letter, their official name, which is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, has failed to pay the California Registry of Charitable Trust renewal fee and send in their IRS 990 financial activity disclosure form, while BLM switched over from being listed as a charity in the middle of 2020 and hectic leadership changes in the past year. So they haven't filed their tax documents. That's basically what it comes down to. And then when Andrew Kerr, he's at the DC Examiner now, when he started digging into this and he said, well, okay, why haven't you filed it? Who's supposed to file it? Who's the current leadership? They couldn't actually say who was in charge of the Black Lives Matter organization. Now, why is this? Now, we know it was founded by Patrisse Cullors and a few others. Now, Patrisse Cullors has gone on to become something of a real estate mogul in the California area. You know, that cheap California real estate out there that somehow she's able to scrape together, you know, with just a little bit of the savings that she's put away in a rusty tin can, right? Now, she's got 3 properties now outside of California. But go and look at this clip of Patrisse Cullors explaining to my old friend Mark Lamont Hill from Temple University, my alma mater, what's going on with BLM.
And that's, I have never taken a salary from the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. And that's important because what the right-wing media is trying to say is the donations that people gave to Black Lives Matter went towards my spending. And that is categorically untrue and incredibly dangerous.
Okay, so this is completely insane, right? Like, you guys get that. This is BLM we're talking about. The group that everyone was told was the most important political movement of our lifetime. The most important political movement, certainly, of 2020, right? If you listen to the mainstream media, $60 million was thrown at these guys in the middle of 2020 because I had all of corporate America had to say, oh, I'm not racist, I'm not racist, I'm not racist. Look, I donated to BLM. I'm not racist, I donated to BLM. I'm not racist, I donated to BLM. Okay, so did BLM actually put that money to work for the things that they claimed it would work for? I mean, they wanted to defund the police, they wanted to break up the nuclear family, they wanted to institute all these reforms, and most importantly, right, you know, right there in the name, they wanted to defend Black lives. So let's just, you know, take a look at the stats. You guys can check this amongst yourselves. I know that here at Human Events Daily, we've done a lot of the reporting on this. Have the homicide rates in inner cities gone up or gone down since the start of the Black Lives Matter movement? Have the homicide rates in the inner cities gone up or gone down since the start of the Black Lives Matter movement nearly 1 decade ago? And I think we all know the answer to that. This group, they're about to be put in financial arrears. They're going to be hit with a crazy amount of taxes. And even the California Globe has said this. You can't get your money. You can't move your money around. And now donors and others who are for BLM and its mission might get raked over with taxes and national embarrassment for not being financially sound. It was a scam. The entire thing was a scam. And the mainstream media and the establishment in this country, people you saw both on the right and the left. Remember, Senator Mitt Romney was out there marching with them. It was always a scam. This organization is ridiculous. They put our country through an insane amount of division. And for what? So that they could get rich and abscond with all of that money. Great job. Great job. And you know what? You got to admire hustle. I respect the hustle. I respect it. But congratulations, because at some point when this country goes back to its senses, you're all going to jail. Well, the past 24 hours have been some of the most embarrassing that the regime has ever had. And what's really going on? Well, a couple of reporters actually decided, I know, to wake up and do their jobs. One at the Department of State, and then another one aboard Air Force One. And in 2 instances, 2 Biden officials were challenged to back up their claims about Russia. And in both of those instances, you saw the officials snapping, attacking, criticizing, getting snippy, and arguing with the reporters themselves. Now, unfortunately, only one of these instances is on tape, and that is State Department spokesman Ned Price. Ned Price, by the way, in terms of background, was a CIA officer for over a decade. So I want you to understand that framing before I play this clip. This guy was an officer of the CIA for over a decade. If you go follow him on Twitter, he will tell you, he'll talk about how great the intelligence community is, how perfect their work is, how important they are. And if you go back a couple of years, you could see actual tweets from him very aggressively attacking the Trump administration over Khashoggi and all sorts of other things. You're hiding behind intelligence. You won't tell us the truth. You won't tell us what's going on. And then you see him in person, and suddenly the keyboard warrior disappears. Suddenly the imprimatur, right, of any kind of credibility is destroyed when you just ask some basic questions. So we don't have time to play this whole clip, but I highly, highly encourage you, go to my Twitter feed, go to my Getter feed, watch this thing in its entirety. It's 5 minutes long. It's got, I think, over 5 million views in just one day. Because of how absolutely ridiculous this CIA stooge, and he is a CIA stooge, so I can say that because he's formerly from the CIA and he's a stooge, in response to a reporter's questions about Russia and simply asking for some modicum of evidence.
Thanks. Okay, well, that's quite a mouthful there. So you said actions such as these suggest otherwise, suggest meaning that they suggest they're not interested in talks and they're going to go ahead with some kind of what action are you talking about?
One, the actions I've just pointed to. The fact that Russia continues to engage in disinformation campaigns.
You made an allegation that they might do that. Have they actually done it?
What we know, Matt, is what I've just said, that they have engaged in this activity, in this planning activity. But let me because obviously this is not the first time we've made these reports public. You'll remember that just a few weeks ago.
I'm sorry, made what report public?
If you let me finish, I will tell you what report we made public.
That's crazy, right? Can you give us the evidence? Well, the evidence is me saying it to you. Try that in court sometime, by the way, to all the lawyers out there. Try that in court. Can you provide us some evidence? Well, I just gave you the evidence. I just did. I just said it. Well, where's the exhibit? You have to enter the exhibit. Oh, do you want me to print out a transcript of my remarks for you? That'll be my exhibit, right? And they say, well, we have intelligence, not evidence. That's not the same thing. And then the reporter, it's amazing. This guy's Matt Lee from the Associated Press, and he's one of these old dinosaurs, right? And by the way, he was very tough on the Trump administration before. He's been tough in the past. There's not a lot of guys like this out there anymore. Now, in the Obama administration, you had a guy, Ben Rhodes, and Ben Rhodes would be out there and he wouldn't talk to the Matt Lees of the world. What he would do is he'd go to the 27-year-olds, the 25-year-olds who get hired by these massive organizations, feed them a line of BS, and then they just repeat it. And they put it and they become stenographers. And then it goes out and people say, oh, well, the AP, the New York Times, the Washington Post has printed it, so it must be true. But when you ask for actual evidence to back it up, you get nothing. So there was another one, Jen Psaki, was asked for proof that she said, and the US government said, the Pentagon said, that an ISIS leader, there's this raid on an ISIS leader, we're told, in Syria. And unfortunately, a lot of civilians, women and children, were killed during this raid. Now, the Pentagon claims that it was because the ISIS leader blew himself up with a suicide vest. However, they didn't back up any evidence on this. And we also know these are the same people that lied about murdering an aid worker and his family in Afghanistan right after President Biden got 13 of our troops killed at Kabul airport. So the reporter said to Jen Psaki on Air Force One, do you have any evidence to back up these claims about this suicide vest? Is there biometric data? Is there some post-blast analysis, BDA? What's going on? Jen Psaki snaps, starts yelling at the reporter, questioning her patriotism, saying, you're believing ISIS, you're taking the side of ISIS, you're taking the side of the terrorists. And I just lean back and I say, you know what? This is perfect for this administration. This is exactly who they are. When people show you who they are, you have to believe them. They do not care about what the evidence is. They don't care about making an actual case to the American people. They want power. They want total control over the narrative. You are seeing a regime in decline, and soon, very soon, you will be seeing a regime in collapse. The American people, the American nation, is doing just fine. But the regime, this regime state that's been imposed on top of the American people, it is cracking and crumbling before our eyes. Well, Winter Storm Landon is bearing down on the United States right now. It's coming through Texas. It's taking out power, 300,000 homes without power. It's coming up, hundreds of flights canceled in the Northeast. Drivers stranded along I-10 for hours near Caryville, Texas. 3 deaths blamed on this in Alabama. It's going through the Northeast, folks. This winter is going to be one of monumental proportions. I've told you about this. Now, we know we also have the preparewithposo.com. That's a great way. If you know you're going to get stuck, you can go and set that up. But then also, you go to mypillow.com, use promo code POSO. Lindell and the people over there have completely redesigned the page. You can now put your promo code in. It follows you as you shop on the page. You want to snuggle up. You want to get ready. Remember, prepare before it happens, not after. Once it happens, it's already too late. MyPillow.com, promo code POSO. And this next story, it's not even a story really, because if you've been paying attention, and as I always say, are you paying attention yet? Speaker Pelosi, listen to what she had to say. Some words of encouragement, some words of wisdom from one of the oldest leaders in the United States who's represented Congress since 1987. When she was first elected, San Francisco. And we see how great San Francisco has become from 1987 to now, right, folks? Listen to what Speaker Pelosi had to say as third in line to the presidency to our Olympians on their way to Beijing.
I would say to our athletes, you're there to compete. Do not risk incurring the anger of the Chinese government because they are ruthless. I know there is a temptation on the part of some to speak out while they are there. I respect that, but I also worry about what the Chinese government might do to their reputations, to their families.
Now, of course, while President Biden may be the commander-in-chief, I think Speaker Pelosi is probably the stock trader-in-chief because she certainly enriched herself, and her family has been enriched since she's been in office. We've seen the CCP go from rulers of a country in poverty to one of the most powerful nations in the world while Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, has been in office. What has she actually accomplished since 1987 for the American people? And we need to start asking this of every single politician out there. I would even ask this about people in conservative media. What have you done? What have you accomplished for the American people? Are you just out there reading the news and you know, oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. You know, liberals did something liberal. Conservatives did something conservative. Let's fight, blah, blah, blah. No, no. That's why stories like the trucker uprising are so important. They are a litmus test. They were able to paralyze the government of Canada in 1 week simply by saying, we're not working anymore. We're done. We're not going to work, and we're just going to sit here and honk our horns and say we're done with this. But you understand that the gravy train between Speaker Pelosi and the CCP has been going on for years. And that's why I laid out in my Newsweek piece earlier this week, it's an elite merger. This isn't capture. This is a deal. This is a sellout. They have sold out this country. Middle America, why are your cities all hollowed out? Why did the jobs all go overseas? And I heard there was some former professor on a podcast recently talking about how it's actually a good thing that we outsourced all our jobs overseas, that we outsourced our manufacturing base, our steel base, which obviously is a national security asset to the United States. You ship that overseas. We put all our chips overseas. We put all of our manufacturing base overseas. And you wonder why the United States has been hollowed out at the benefit. And cui bono, right? Cui bono. Who benefits? Well, the Pelosi's have certainly benefited. The Biden family, they have absolutely benefited. We've seen what's going on with Bohai. Do you get it yet? Are you paying attention? None of this will change. None of this will change until federal action is taken against the politicians and the corporations that have been getting rich because of this. But until then, Xi Jinping has his coronation ceremony. It's already been done. It's a fait accompli. He's got it in the cards, and he's got everyone in the world exactly where he wants them. So the trucker uprising is continuing in Ottawa. We also know that the blockade is continuing on the Alberta-Montana border right there between the US and Canada. We're also hearing stories that the Michigan border crossing with Toronto will now also potentially see a blockade itself with Ontario province. And so a lot of people have been asking me, but wait, Poso, hold on. Because this thing is continuing. Isn't this just like the Occupy movement again? Well, I think it's like the Occupy movement, but what's the difference between CHAZ and the trucker uprising in Ottawa? What's the difference between the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which was taken over in the summer of 2020 in Seattle, versus this? How can you say you support one, you didn't support the other, you oppose the other? All right, we'll break this down. But I want to show you a video of what the truckers are doing up there, up in Ottawa. And so there's not a voice on this one. So if you're just listening to this, I'm explaining what you're hearing. The truckers have now started building permanent structures where they're out. They're talking about building a community kitchen, something for the homeless, for the protests, or people who are there because they're getting a lot of food and they're getting a lot of provisions. And so they're actually putting together, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. They're building, roof struts and walls, just basic particle wood and stuff, but basically getting this built up there because it turns out when the actual working class holds a protest, they have a little something called life skills, right? So go listen to this, and if you're watching, you got to see this. It's amazing. They're actually building stuff right there in the middle of Ottawa. And so I was in CHAZ, right? And I've been watching a lot of Viva Fry's videos from Ottawa and kind of comparing the two. So I went to that ridiculous, remember the CHAZ farm where they said they actually set up a plot where they said this area of the farm is for black and indigenous people only. It's like, oh, so you had segregation in your little CHAZ farm. And they put some tarp down and tried to put seeds and dirt on top of it. But here's the difference, right? In general, what's the difference? Simple. One is legal and peaceful. They're taking up space, yes, but they're legally and lawfully protesting, and they've been nonviolent. Also, their grievance is with a specific government law, or a set of government laws, being these mandates, which are already arguably unconstitutional. In CHAZ, you had an armed group of militants who fought pitched battles with the police force of Seattle until the police force was ordered to stand down by Mayor Jenny Durkan. They then took over the area. Armed militants took over that area and pushed any police, EMTs, fire, pushed them all out. It's obviously not a protest. That's an armed revolt. And I was there and I saw it. And people died when they were killed by the people that were manning the barricades of CHAZ. And they wouldn't just want one thing. They wanted the actual overthrow of the entire US government and the disbanding of police. They're communists. That's what they're about. All right, well, that's it for this week on Human Events Daily. Thank you so much for watching us. Remember our vow, our oath to you. Be good, be brief, be gone. But I'm going to ask you, like I do every day, for your homework. Share this out with one of your Normie friends, and then please go leave us a 5-star review on the page, on the podcast page for this, wherever you listen to this, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if you're on Rumble, Getter, etc. Please leave us that. It really helps us out. It gives us a leg up when it comes to the metrics and all this other stuff that's out there. But before we go, it's time, of course, for our history break. Today in 1746 was the birthday of Thaddeus Kosciuszko. Now, he was born in Poland, but as an officer, he came to the United States and served in the Revolutionary War before returning to Poland. He actually built the first fortifications at West Point. We must remember our history. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
All right, this is Jack Posobiec signing off from the regime-occupied National Capital Region. We now send it back to the free state of Arizona as Turning Point Live continues with The Couch.
Pelosi here at home.
Well, and then that's where I would be on the other side here. I don't think our athletes should say anything because they don't have protection from the U.S. government whatsoever. So you heard that there was a diplomatic boycott. You don't have anybody here from our government that's there to protect you. So if things go haywire, they should have been talking about this stuff like over a year ago.
Yeah.
They should have been talking about it when China first got that Olympic bid and was awarded. You get awarded the Olympics.
Well, and I think that's actually a fair
point
point too, because if the U.S. government is comfortable abandoning our own citizens in the hands of the Taliban, they'll absolutely be comfortable doing the same for the CCP.
I think we should just start calling her Speaker Szechuan. Szechuan chicken. But you know what? She's right. She's right when she says, shut up or they're going to disappear your ass. I mean, she's not wrong about that. The problem is, I agree with Isabel. I don't think that we should have been going at all.
In the first place. If you're going to send people, use it as an opportunity to make a statement.
I'm so embarrassed and ashamed and angry that we are allowing this country with such a problematic history of human rights abuses who unleash a virus on the entire world. They're not held responsible, or I'm sorry, they're not held accountable for any of these actions. And we're literally going to reward them by sending them to a ceremony that celebrates their government. The slap in the face to the world, them having a Uyghur Muslim start the ceremony.
We actually have that video too we can show you right now.
Oh, yes.
As I say, as I wish the athletes well, I do not encourage them to speak out against the Chinese government there because I fear for their safety if they do.
Actually, Speaker Pelosi doubling down on her statements again too, but when we were talking about the opening ceremonies that you're going to get to watch on NBC or Peacock tonight, if you decide to do so, they did have a Uyghur that was lighting the Olympic flame. Check that one out.
It's just so disturbing to me. Like, that's disgusting. Here, look, everything's fine. We have one person lighting a flame on a torch.
Thinking,
Close
what
your
are
eyes.
they telling them that they get in exchange for doing this? I wonder, if the government said, like, you're going to do this, you're going to act, you're going to be excited, and then, tonight you get an extra crumb with your ration. I mean, who knows if they're, like, in the camps? We wouldn't know.
This would be like Hitler putting forth a Jew to light the torch during the Olympics. That's disgusting.
Smile.
It's absolutely asinine to me that we are there right now.
In the first place.
In the fact that you have someone like Speaker Pelosi talking, using this rhetoric now, this is lambs to the slaughter.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like right now. Peng Shuai, if you remember that situation, one of the best female tennis players in the entire world, wasn't there for the Australian Open. People even tried wearing "Where is Peng Shuai" t-shirts at the Aussie Open. They told them to take those off, and they can't make a political stance. They ended up coming back a few days later and allowing people to, but look at how, just like you said, the CCP is allowed to do whatever they want. There's genocide going on right now, and it's that people group that just lit the flame. And I know Jack shared that tweet too. It's like, just like you said, it's a slap in the face. Just like, oh, you got to do something about it? Nancy Pelosi's not going to do anything if something comes down to it. I hope nothing happens to our athletes, and I'm terrified.
I think
for
as a
our
country,
athletes.
we look so unbelievably weak, the fact that we are sending our athletes and showing up. That's what I'm worried about. To the world, what do we look like as a country look at participating in this?
And then another thing that was said too is Yang Shu, it's the Deputy Director General for Beijing's 2022 International Relations Department, basically throwing out a threat to our athletes and any athlete out there, said this. They warned that Olympians who violate the Olympic spirit, which they determine what a violation of the Olympic spirit is, will be punished by Chinese authorities. Went on to say, an expression that is in line with the Olympic spirit, I'm sure will be protected, and anything and any behavior or speeches that is against the Olympic spirit, especially against the Chinese laws and regulations, are also subject to certain punishment. Our government had nothing to say about that. And that's why I tell our athletes, just win gold, compete well, don't say anything.
Come home and say everything, because we want to know.
Please.
I'm kind of worried because I remember under Trump, President Trump, he showed an immense amount of strength, right, when he was president. And, you knew that if you mess with him, or if you mess with the United States of America, or you mess with any of our citizens, there will be hell to pay. Excuse me. But you look at President Biden, and he is so weak. He is so frail, falling upstairs, tripping over his words. I mean, everything that he does is just a show of weakness. And you look at a situation like this, you know that he will not have your back if you speak out in a situation like that. You know that there will be, he will showcase the backside of himself and not have your back at all whatsoever. So I'm very scared about these people that are going to speak out. I want them to. I really want them, because this is the best forum for them to be able to do so, being at the place. But at the end of the day, what is the United States of America, the superpower, what are they going to do if they imprison you because you spoke out and now you're in prison, now you're being, if you violate the Olympic spirit, now you're in prison, now you're in the Chinese authorities. What is the United States of America really going to do for you? So it makes me a little upset, but I am worried as well.
Hulk mad.
Hulk mad.
Let's
Hulk
go.
very
Don't
mad.
make him angry. And I think these decisions come from the top. I know we've talked about the Leah Thomas situation quite a bit. I had some really courageous Team USA swimmers on the Breakaway podcast the other day, and it shouldn't be up to these women. I know they had the teammates of Leah Thomas. They just came out with a letter themselves, but decisions should be made from the top, from the NCAA.
Yep.
And decisions should be made from the top, from our government in a situation like this. It should not be up to our athletes to make some sort of courageous stand. We see what's going on at schools. We're going to cover mass madness that's going across the country. Kids are having to step up and try to make a difference. Truckers are making a difference. Like, people in power aren't enacting the change that we desperately need, and it's up to them, and they're failing.
Well, reframing the issue a bit, maybe all of this messaging is coming from the top. Because frankly, I don't necessarily think the United States government is the superpower of the world anymore. This last year, the CCP led the way for China to become the richest country in the world. They clearly have their own rules and regulations on the world stage and are not punished for any of their nefarious behavior. They have their tentacles seeping into every aspect of culture here in the United States and the Western world. Every Disney movie, every product sold to you at an NBA game, most major athletes, most politicians, they're all covering up the tracks of the CCP. So they are clearly the ones in power. They're clearly the ones setting the standard here. And maybe it does have to be the grassroots level that stands up and says this is not okay, that points out forced abortions and forced sterilizations that are happening in Uyghur Muslim camps, that points out slave labor being used to create Disney's Mulan and every other movie made by Disney in the area, and of course everything that we're going to see at the Olympics. So it's scary, and we don't like to be the first person to do something. Nobody ever does. No one wants to be the provincial martyr to lay down their reputation or their safety or whatever to point out these really atrocious things that are happening, but maybe that's the way it has to be right now because those in power are the CCP.
And what I worry about is 10, 20, 30 years from now, how are we going to look back and see these Olympics?
Do you guys think if you were in the position as an Olympian, you've worked your entire life to get to the Olympics, but as a conservative, this was what was going on, the Olympics were taking place in China, do you guys think that you would say, I refuse to go and give up your Olympic dream and protest, or what would you do?
I'd win gold, and then in my press conference from winning gold, lay it all out on the table.
Out there or coming back?
Out there.
Oh, out there, yeah, I would too. Yeah, I would too. Yep.
Someone has to be the first person to do this because everyone is thinking it, and people are just afraid to be the first person to do it. But imagine if every single one of our athletes linked arms together and did a joint press conference about all of this. They're not going to disappear hundreds of U.S. citizens, and at least our government may not do something, but the world stage isn't just going to stand by. Our allies aren't going to stand by and let that happen.
If there was a huge number of them willing to do it,
somebody has to be the first person.
There's also a diplomatic boycott from Canada, and I think the UK as well. So we think about some of our other allies out there. Like, are we actually going to be able to do something if things go haywire for an athlete? I think that would be unbelievably courageous. But it would be
I think so. I do. Yeah. Look what happened with Afghanistan. Most of our allies used their military to help get our citizens out, even when we were refusing to do so, and that was really inspiring to see. I think even if our federal government totally blundered the whole situation and fumbled the ball, so to speak, there would still be enough people who care about freedom as a concept, let alone the United States as your ally, that people would step in and get our people out. I really do believe that.
Yeah, I would hope so. But I think if you're an athlete right now, if I was an athlete, that's why I think that's a great question, because we don't say this stuff lightly, and I don't say this lightly because a lot of people, they've worked their entire life to get to the Olympics. Yeah. This could be their first and only Olympics. Mm-hmm. This could be a time where they're setting records or something like that. But I think things are bigger than medals. Like human rights. It's not just like a conservative issue here. And I think it's a great question, but it's a human rights issue. Mm-hmm. And if we're not standing up for stuff now, when are we going to stand up at any time? Because this is, maybe will go down as the worst genocide we've seen in our generation by far, and maybe the worst genocide we will ever see. And
I mean, I think there's a way to highlight human rights atrocities without not participating, though. I mean, think about the 1930s and nations around the world trying to decide, do we send our athletes to Germany in the midst of everything that's going on? And you saw Jesse Owens wearing a gold medal, standing for excellence. And I think that's so interesting when you talk about the standards of the Olympic spirit or whatever, and the IOC saying they're going to punish athletes who don't stand up to the Olympic spirit. The Olympic spirit is global excellence, period. It's being the best of the best of the best. And that, in my opinion, also includes standing for freedom in every aspect possible so that people can be the best version of themselves. What a powerful statement that was for Jesse Owens to receive a gold medal as Hitler was watching him receive that medal, and the commentary on the world stage as a result of that, standing for true equality. I think there's an opportunity to do that here, but I worry that people will cower in fear because they don't want the political backlash.
And that's what I would say is, like, we were way stronger back then than we are now.
Yeah, I agree.
We knew that we could take them out, no problem, that if any of our athletes were to go over there and make some sort of stand, that we would have their back. Speaker Pelosi doesn't have their back. None of our diplomats are out there whatsoever. I think it's a totally different United States. And
that's a fair point.
And that's why I think it's a terrible situation for our athletes to be in right now, especially when you're getting threats from the CCP themselves, because they are the arbiters of truth out there.
I don't know, but I just saw them yesterday yank some Dutch cameraman.
Yep, I saw that too.
Off the air. The CCP guys show up and just start dragging him away with a camera on him. So they are not, they're very scared.
No, not at all. And then actually after the break, we're going to show you video footage of that Dutch reporter actually getting pulled off air. We're going to be back in just 90 seconds.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
TPUSA Live is about to be spicy. I mean, would you expect anything less? It's me, Alex Clark. Of course it's going to be spicy. Tune into The Spillover, my brand new podcast. Think of it like the older sister to politics with a lot more conservative.
What's up, guys? My name is John Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's going to be a great time here on Breaking. And like we said before the commercial break, we're going to show you that video of that Dutch reporter getting pulled off air while they're reporting about the 2022 Winter Olympics out in Beijing. I got Alex Clark, Isabel Brown, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. We got this for you. A few weeks ago, Dr. Zelenko joined us on TPUSA Live to talk about his experience as a doctor in New York during the pandemic. We learned some more information about COVID-19 treatments and what could have been done better. Dr. Zelenko wants to remind you that his vitamin supplement, Z-Stack, supports and promotes a healthy immune system and lifestyle. Plus, it's made in the USA. You gotta love that. Get yours today at zstacklife.com/TPUSA. Again, that's zstacklife.com/TPUSA. Now, without further ado, I know we were talking about the CCP and how they're just running things. We are weaker than we've been when we were out in Nazi Germany. And now the CCP is able to do whatever they want, not just with the United States and our athletes, but basically anybody else that's there. Check out this video.
De komende uren laten zien.
Ja, 咱们往前走，哥们儿。哎，稍等一会儿，我先在新闻联播。Ja, we worden hier inmiddels, je merkt het, al weggetrokken. We zijn net ook al bij een ander gebied weggezet. Dus ik vrees dat wij later even bij moeten terugkomen.
Ja, dat kan halen, ja. Dat denk ik ook, Sjoerd. We gaan door met het volgende onderwerp. Ja.
It's a scary place to be. What was your reaction when you first saw that? I know because Jack Posobiec put that out there as well, too.
I mean, my first reaction when I saw that was, bye-bye. Like, he's gone.
Yeah.
That was my reaction. And then I thought the woman, the news anchor, his friend, she just was like, well, back to the news. It looked like, I mean, I couldn't understand what they were saying. Obviously, I don't speak Dutch. But, like, to me, it looked like she was just like, let's go. But I would have been like, hey, you know, I would have been screaming at the camera, what's going on here? You know, but it didn't, it seemed like she was trying to keep things moving. So I was a little disappointed in that. I'll have to ask my boyfriend. He speaks Dutch. I'll have to ask him, what the heck
I was going to ask you.
I know, we should.
About that.
He can speak Dutch, and so I think, you know, he would have something to say about that, but I'm curious. But it's very scary. That's why I'd be scared to say something at the Olympics.
Yeah.
But, you know, look at me. I wouldn't last in jail. I'm not eating gruel.
Now you know what it'd be like in the gulag with Alex Clark.
Yes.
It's not really the gulag.
Stop talking the blankets.
Yeah.
Is there Wi-Fi here?
But it's like it's another example of it's a terrifying place to be. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you're an athlete or whether you're a media member, and you got to remember that NBC is not sending their broadcasters out there at all.
What does that tell you?
That's why I think it's absolutely insane to me that it's up to our athletes to make a stand. Like that would be unbelievably courageous.
Yes.
Like the broadcasters aren't there, U.S. diplomats aren't there. Honestly, if I was an athlete, I don't know if I would have the courage to stand up and say something, because I'm like, would you guys have my back on Team USA? Like, would anybody else? That's
I really
don't know.
think there's more people than we give it credit for that would have your back.
I would hope so.
I really, really do, because at the end of the day, it's not a partisan political issue. It's not like, hey, I'm a conservative and I'm not okay with the CCP. You're talking about genocide.
Yeah.
And I really think there are enough Americans with some courage left that enough people would stand up and support you.
I would hope so. And then also, too, this comes back to, I know Jack Posobiec had a great article in Newsweek that this is basically Xi Jinping's coronation.
Yeah.
And remember, like, he's up for, like, this re-election campaign and everything. And
that's what election. Okay.
Yeah, it's always fair over there. You know that for sure.
Clearly.
But the Olympics are held at a place where it should be honoring. And it's just like, hey, look at all the good that it's done for the world. I know the New York Times came out and said, you know, China's changed a lot since their last Olympics, and it's really done a lot. It's like the New York Times, again, that called an old ISIS leader a religious scholar.
Yeah, of course.
It just goes to show that the CCP is able to do whatever the heck they want. We shouldn't be there. In my opinion, don't watch the games. We'll watch it. We'll keep you up to date about what's going on there. I just hope our athletes are safe.
Yeah,
and
amen.
We'll see what happens. Right. But I just hope things don't go haywire.
We'll be praying every day.
Definitely. No doubt. But we're gonna get you up to speed about some more mask madness. Holy shit! Mask madness. You brought up Bruce Almighty. I was like,
got him.
It's so much madness I can't even speak straight. But there's actually some interesting mask mandates in the Olympics as well. So you're supposed to wear them when you're not competing, and then you're actually not supposed to speak to people when you're in close spaces or in elevators, and then you're actually not supposed to sing or cheer for your teammates at points too.
Wow.
It's crazy. But I know there's some interesting footage out of Oakdale Unified School District. I know this is something that's been shared on Politics, and you shared that as well. So some students staged a walkout, and then they also went to school without masks on. And then they got put into their gymnasium. Check out this video.
So a little bit more context there. Basically what happened with these students is they chose to come to school not wearing masks at the Oakdale Unified School District. The administration locked them in the gymnasium and barricaded the doors with tables so that they couldn't get out of the room. And then they turned off the heat to make it freezing cold in this gymnasium to get these students to wear their masks and freeze them out, basically, and like force them to comply or leave, I guess. But how are you going to leave if the gymnasium's barricaded by folding tables? I sincerely hope one of these parents sues, because that is a clear-cut case of child imprisonment, let alone child abuse. A massive fire. I mean, you could sue on all kinds of grounds for this. But that's insane, because a handful of kids showed up without a mask to school, really?
So this is, I'm looking here, Oakdale, okay? But yesterday I shared this to my Instagram story and I accidentally said it was Oakland. And
I did forget to DM you to tell you
everyone's responding, they're like, looking at this classroom, this is not Oakland. I was like, looking at these students, I was like, you're right, that was a mistake, but I don't live in California, I got this stuff. But yes, that is crazy. But you know what was so inspiring? Is that these are high school kids. A lot of times we talk about amazing things college kids are doing, but now these are high school students across the country in multiple states over the course of the last week, staging walkouts, staging protests, saying we are sick of wearing this dirty cloth on our face.
That doesn't work.
It's about time. I mean, okay, look. Germs, viruses, bacteria has been around since forever, since the dawn of time.
Kids.
Come on now. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, the world has convinced everybody that you need to wear this mask. Okay, here in America, who was really wearing a mask prior to 2020? I mean, like, really, who was really doing that? Excuse me. So you look at it now, and it's like, how did the whole world, how did America convince people that it is now normal to wear a mask over your face for, what, 6, 7, 8 hours a day if you're working in an office? It's unbelievable. And now these kids have to wear these masks. Of all people, kids? Kids? The ones who are least susceptible to the virus, they got to wear the mask? I just don't. But yet and still, when it comes to going to these stadiums and arenas and all that, who's wearing a mask in an arena? But at school, you got to wear a mask.
Well, there was a Pew Research poll actually in 2020. It said 64% of people that are left-leaning and white would wear a mask in an outdoor setting.
Not surprising. I'm not surprised.
Why?
But I love seeing this from kids. I love seeing this from kids, especially because A, they're testing these masks that kids are having to wear every single day at school, and usually they're reusing them and not throwing them away or washing them, and it's actually causing them to get sick with bacterial infections all the time, like pneumonia, instead of preventing them from getting COVID-19, but I digress. Secondarily, I think it's so important, and it circles back to the conversation we just had in the previous segment, that somebody has to stand up and do something. And if it's not going to be the school board or the school district, and it's not going to be the teachers, and it's not going to be the Department of Education, who's it going to be? It has to be these kids. So kudos to them. We are cheering them on every step of the way. I love seeing this.
And I love the leader of that. I know you shared that video on Instagram yourself.
From some town in Washington State.
Yeah, they had, they weren't going to wear masks, and the way the kid presented it was like, I don't want to see anybody fighting with teachers. I don't want to see anybody talking back to teachers. What you do is you go in there without a mask. If they ask you to put it on, you say, no, thank you, and just keep walking. And he said, what they need to do is kick you out. Because if they kick you out and then there's mass absence from your school, that has to be reported to the state. And like, these kids are unbelievably courageous, and they know exactly what they're doing. The fact it's come down to them standing up is unbelievable.
Which is crazy to me. That, I mean, that just shows, so, you know, if that California school in Oakdale or whatever, like, why wouldn't they just suspend all those kids instead of locking them in the gym and doing those things? It's because they don't want to report those absences.
Exactly.
Finally, you have LA Mayor Garcetti and Governor Newsom. They're holding their breath. He said, I don't need to wear a mask. It's insane. Kids do not comply. Coming up next, Joe Rogan and Spotify.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Osiga Kaku. I'm from the great state of North Carolina, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
My name is Preston Para, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle Clare from Bolingbrook, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Johnny Richardson. I'm from Prescott, Arizona, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
I'm Rachel. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and you'll see me at freedomsquare.com. I'm Soraya. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com. My name is Michelle DeGroot from Los Angeles, California, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, my name is Emma Faye Redcan, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got MAGA Hulk Stephen Davis. Why do you have a scratchy throat?
Shut up.
Man?
I have baby gums, and I was literally held down.
Against your will.
Against my will. On Black History Month, no less. Held down and forced to drink hot sauce.
I don't believe anyone was holding you down.
It happened. It
took multiple people, Alex, but
it did happen.
Month, Alex. Right? You have to believe everything he said.
I love that this big, strong guy is like hurt right now from hot sauce. Clear his throat. He's so uncomfortable.
This was like before the entire show, just in case you're wondering.
So I'm dying right now. Don't mind me.
He's dying. Well, have your water, Stephen. Have your water.
Cheers.
And also, too, before we get into this Joe Rogan segment, because there's a little bit more news about this whole misinformation campaign that everyone's trying to throw on Joe Rogan from the left. Obviously, you got a lot of people that are trying to say, "Oh, get rid of my music," like Neil Young. It's like, all right, dude, like nobody knows who you are if you're younger than 65. But we do have a little bit of breaking news. I know we just received from the AP. The Biden administration is waiving sanctions on Iran's nuclear program.
Oh
boy.
Lord help us.
Ugh. Oh, goody. Here we go.
What did I say about this the other day, though? I literally said if I was a bad guy and I was in charge of Russia, China, or Iran, all three of which I would coordinate our efforts for Russia to invade Ukraine, for China to invade Taiwan, and Iran to go bonkers with their nuclear program, because we're not going to do anything about it. Just saying.
You spoke it into existence.
I manifested it. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, just be prepared for things to get worse and worse and worse.
Oh,
when you think things can't get any worse, you have things like this. Because it's like, athletes, good luck, whatever. We're not going to have your back at all. Just shut up and you should be okay. See you guys in a few weeks. People left in Afghanistan, sorry, we'll maybe come get you at some point.
Yeah.
People at the border, sorry if people are just coming in without getting COVID tested. And it's going to be your tax dollars that pay for all that debacle there. And then now, Iran, do whatever the heck you want.
Well, that's scary.
No.
Yeah, that shouldn't give you any comfort.
And of course, they're not going to talk about that. Instead, they're going to say, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, what did Joe Rogan
He's so
Yeah,
evil.
he's a terrible person.
Joe Rogan!
Joe Rogan is the guy to go to for any quality civil discourse.
Gotta have a villain. They wanted to get rid of President Trump, so they did. They banned him off, the face of the earth, essentially, in terms of social media. So now they gotta find somebody else to talk about, and that's Joe Rogan.
Just think of the people that he's had on. He had Senator Bernie Sanders. He had the crew from The Social Dilemma.
He endorsed Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, he's a Bernie bro.
He's not just some right-wing extremist, but that's how they attack this.
He's trying to paint him like that.
You see that in so many different instances.
John, anyone is a right-wing extremist that is willing to hear another idea.
Not even here, that's willing to ask a question.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what his entire program is. I think it's so funny that everybody, including our White House, is going after Joe Rogan, saying he himself is spreading all of these conspiracy theories and all this misinformation. He's literally sitting there in every episode for like 4 hours asking people questions, and the guest answers the questions. He's not the one promoting anything that may even potentially be deemed as misinformation, which we can have a whole separate conversation on how everything they tell you is wrong is not. But he's an interviewer.
Well,
how is that
I
so dangerous?
Something like the BBC sent some team to fact check, all these Joe Rogan episodes that had to do with the virus, and then
I don't know if it was the Daily Wire or what, but then what they went through and was like, all of these fact checks are not right. You know, they didn't include the whole quote or whatever. Like, so that's
They took them out of context?
I cannot remember who did that, but it's all so corrupt.
Yes.
It's wild.
From the ground up. How dare you have someone who's going to have on someone else who's going to speak something counter to our narrative? You can't have that. We can't have anyone speaking that's counter to the prevailing narratives, because if you do, people might wake up. God forbid that happens.
Yeah, and there's other celebrities out there. Obviously, you heard about Neil Young, said, I'm going to take
Sorry,
on this.
who?
Neil Young? Yeah, I don't think you've probably heard of him. I know there's definitely no one at Turning Point
Neil
USA.
who?
Maybe like a handful of people here.
You can put white noise on an MP3 and like upload that to Apple iTunes or whatever, and no one in Gen Z, if you said this is Neil Young, they would just believe it.
I saw a really great meme about this actually that was like, everyone over the age of 65. What's Spotify? Everyone between the ages of 35 and 65. Oh, Neil Young's still alive? Everyone under the age of 35. Who's Neil Young? Like, the information gap here is just really...
Yeah, it could just be like a cat meowing. They'd be like, this is Neil Young. And, you know, some 21-year-old would be like, okay.
Sweet, man. Furries, let's do it. That's what Gen Z would say.
I can't believe how much we talk about furries in The View on the show.
We really do.
Absolutely
There's a lot of furry business going on
But I
here.
know we have that video of Joe Rogan. Like, his response to, I think, was fantastic. Because you look to him, like, come from the horse's mouth. What do you think about this whole situation? I think he had a lot of grace behind it and said, hey, this is the way I go about things. If you don't like it, you must not like the truth. Check it out.
Like, for instance, 8 months ago, if you said, if you get vaccinated, you can still catch COVID and you can still spread COVID, you would be removed from social media. They would ban you from certain platforms. Now, that's accepted as fact. If you said, I don't think cloth masks work, you would be banned from social media. Now, that's openly and repeatedly stated on CNN.
That's good.
And then even someone like Brian Stelter, what he had to say is, oh my, you think about major newsrooms like CNN. We have health departments and desks and operations that work on verifying information on COVID-19. And then you have talk show stars like Joe Rogan who just wing it, who make it up as they go along.
Or, you know, interview the man who invented the technology for mRNA vaccines and legitimate experts, not front cover of your magazine TV doctors like Dr. Fauci, but I digress.
Okay, so let's get into this, because this is what really pisses me off, and I don't understand why all of these conservatives are celebrating this that I've seen on social media today. So because of this whole controversy, right, Spotify comes out and they say, look, you know, we believe in free speech. We do not want to be editorializing people. We just want to be a publisher. We just want to, you know, post people's stuff. And so all these conservatives, I mean, I've seen everybody, Dinesh D'Souza, all these people that I love and respect, everybody's like, yeah, this is amazing, go Spotify. But if that is the case, and they are truly just publishing things and they're not trying to editorialize, then why are they saying that they're going to put a disclaimer, they said, on any episode that discusses the virus, that gives an alternative opinion to the experts, even though we know people like Dr. Malone and all these people are experts. So I don't get, sometimes I feel like conservatives will just jump on any, you know, well-to-do person, social media person or celebrity or whatever that says anything remotely, you know, in line with what we feel, and they will ignore all these other things. Yeah, he's saying we agree with free speech and we don't want to editorialize people, but also yesterday or whatever it was, they said they're going to put disclaimers on all their episodes that feature guests that, you know, don't go along with like the CNN fact checker beliefs. So why are conservatives celebrating this? I feel like I'm the only one that is like, wait a minute, I don't trust these people. Sorry.
Well, you shouldn't trust them, because especially what happened in the Spillover episode. They tried
That's
pulling
right.
some garbage with you.
That's right. When, I think that the second episode of the Spillover, we had journalist and investigative reporter Abigail Schreier on, who's investigated the transgender craze that has really targeted teen girls. She wrote a whole book called The Transgender Craze Seducing Her Daughters. I did an interview with her. It had been up for several months, and then all of a sudden, I think a bunch of, you know, like the trans people were like reporting it and saying this is bad, hate speech, whatever. They removed my episode. So then I came out and was like, hey, everybody tag Spotify in the comments, say where is Alex's episode of the Spillover. Finally, magically, in like 12 hours, I get another email saying, we're so sorry, your episode was moved by mistake. Yeah, BS.
Okay.
My episode was not removed by mistake. You just had enough people flooding saying what the heck is going on, and they know that I work for Turning Point USA, and Charlie Kirk would never let that stuff fly, and he would probably go on Tucker the next night and call them out. So that's what it was. They figured out who I was and where I worked, and then they were probably scared. Not even really of me, but they were probably scared of Charlie.
Well, that's what's happening with Joe Rogan, because as we all know, the Joe Rogan Experience podcast is an exclusive to Spotify podcast.
Yep.
So I don't really think they have a business option of deleting these episodes or canceling the show, because that is the #1 podcast in the world, okay? On average, 11 million people listen to an episode of Joe Rogan's podcast. Think about that for a second. In a time where CNN has lost 90% of its viewership during calendar year 2021 alone, everyone is flocking to alternative sources like the Joe Rogan Experience, and of course the other biggest podcasts in the world are also Spotify exclusive podcasts. Call Her Daddy Is, which I digress is a whole separate conversation that we can have. But millions and millions of people are listening to these shows. And so I don't think Spotify has an option to delete them or cancel the show or censor some of this information, because that's where all of their revenue is coming from. Their entire listener base is flocking to these programs as an alternative source of information. But here is what I love about Joe Rogan. Okay, so many things. I could go on and on and on for hours. Joe Rogan is a guy who's willing to talk about any subject. He's willing to go there on any subject because he's after one thing, and it's very simple: objective truth.
Yep.
He is willing to ask all of the questions, to say the quiet part out loud, to pull the real experts into the room and sit across from them, even if he may disagree with them politically or otherwise ideologically, and just try to get to the bottom of what we can decipher to be true. No one else in media is doing that, and the fact that the White House in particular is so threatened by this shocks and fascinates me, because I would be hard-pressed to find 11 people who still believe anything President Joe Biden says, but 11 million people listen to everything Joe Rogan says for hours on end every single week. So that should tell you something about the fact that people are waking up in this country.
And that's what's fascinating is you have people like at CNN, Brian Stelter, trying to say he just wings it. Nobody just wings a 3.5-hour conversation with Elon Musk.
No.
What the hell are you
or Kanye
talking
West.
about?
Right.
Or
any-
he is
I mean,
one of the
anyone,
most difficult
really.
people I would guess to interview.
Yeah, they can go off the rails really
We've
quick.
we've all interviewed people,
Yes.
and it's difficult. Even
Yes.
like some of your friends that have a 3.5-hour conversation.
Yeah.
It might be tough to have a 3.5-hour conversation with your significant other, maybe at times. But he's sitting down with everybody across the board and getting down to the truth. The truth terrifies the left.
What's
and
crazy-
that's the biggest thing.
In 2022, you know who American citizens actually are looking to get their information? Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Dave Portnoy.
True.
Those are the most
Who could have
trusted
predicted
sources
that?
on culture and news in America.
Jordan Peterson's up there too.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Alternative figures is the
Right.
point. I mean, who would have known that Elon Musk would have gone full based on social media
I
and
don't know.
started talking
I don't
about
even know
current
if I trust
events?
him. I don't even know if
I like what he's doing about Doge,
trust him.
though. That's big. That's big for him.
You're all about the Doge.
That's huge.
So, yeah, you know, when it comes to Spotify and stuff, I just don't know that we should all of a sudden be like, wow, they said the words,
True.
I like free speech. And then, like, we're acting like robots just to be like, yay, Spotify. That's what I feel like conservatives are doing. That's weird to me.
And I think it all comes down to Joe Rogan has got the keys to the castle. He can do whatever he wants.
Absolutely.
He's
They
uncancelable.
paid him, uncancelable. And how many people are really like that out in the world?
Very
Probably just
few.
the people that you named.
Yeah, the people I named and Kanye.
That's it. And that's what's absolutely incredible about what he's done here is he could literally tell Spotify goodbye. He could start his own media company, probably make even more money. And then Spotify is just, they're not making as much money anymore. Their stock
they're
drops,
losing
everything.
millions of dollars if he walks. I mean, that is, as I mentioned, the most successful podcast on earth.
Yeah.
You know what I think is really interesting about those three people, Joe, Dave, and Tucker, is that all of them are, you know, millionaires, like some of the richest people, but all three of them, if you think about it and you followed their entire career, they have not changed who they've been. They haven't let money change them. They haven't let fame change them. If you watch an old video from the early 2000s of Dave Portnoy, he has the same personality, he's saying the same stuff. Old Tucker videos, same thing. Joe Rogan, same person. It's just that more people caught on to what they were doing. They have bigger audiences, but they haven't let anything change them like that. They haven't been bought out. And it's so hard to find people that haven't allowed themselves to be bought, including our freaking president.
And it's so funny to see some people that say like, yeah, it's very true when it comes from the top down. And you have a lot of people out there who try to say like, well, you know, if it's not going to work with Neil Young, I'll stand up and I'll say, like, I'm taking my stuff off there. So the Obamas even threatened that they're going to leave Spotify.
See, I thought about this. The only person that could stand up and say, I'm going to remove my music from Spotify, and this would legit throw a wrench in, would be Taylor Swift.
Yep.
Taylor Swift wields so much power and respect in the music industry. If she were to say, I will only go to Apple exclusive, Spotify would have to seriously rethink some stuff. And that is something to think about, because she wrote that letter, open letter, telling them they better start paying their artists that they were playing. And they did that. That was a huge thing in the press. So let's pray Taylor stays where she is and keeps her mouth shut for once. And that's, as a Swiftie, I'm saying that.
I want Charlie back on the couch too. When you two were talking about that, I said like, "You're not a Swiftie, Charlie." And he gave me this look like, "Don't you ever say that to me ever again."
He hates her, and I love her.
But shout out to Joe Rogan. I think he's been absolutely incredible. Keep supporting him. It's amazing. Coming up next, we got National Bubblegum Day. We got some shenanigans coming up in 3 minutes. See you soon.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Good ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. It's going to be an interesting segment because it's National Bubblegum Day, and we're all talking with gum in our mouth.
A lot of gum.
The ASMR people are really gonna love this.
Yes, yes indeed.
Everyone chew.
I hate this. No one told me this would turn
All
into
our producers
ASMR.
in their ears are like, stop!
ASMR is the worst.
They're the
I
greatest
love
thing to
it.
sleep to. I sleep to them
I
all
like
the time.
watching those ladies just eat crab legs and stuff.
It is wild to me that people will
absolutely.
amass like
Oh,
tens
goodness
of
gracious.
millions of followers
That's
on
your number
TikTok
one?
just doing
Crab
ASMR.
legs?
It's crazy.
Actually,
Freaking awesome.
my favorite ASMR videos on YouTube are chiropractors cracking backs.
Really?
And
You
babies,
live like that.
infants, because they're like a little glow stick. That sounds really bad,
That's
but it's
disgusting.
really interesting.
It was
Don't
in the
clip that.
context
Don't
of
clip
chiropractic
that.
appointments. Thank you. I just feel that disclaimer needs to be provided.
Yeah, you and your husband, yeah, this little kid's like a glow stick. Just look at that.
I'm fascinated. Watch baby chiropractor adjustments. It's like, how do they do that and not break them in half? It's very cool. Science.
Science, baby.
Science
At
girl,
the
come
end of
on.
the day,
We love
science.
it.
We're going to try to blow bubbles.
You got way too much.
I
got
got
a
way
lot.
too much gum. So we are chewing double bubble. And I think usually one is plenty, but I got greedy. I'm like, I want to have a huge bubble.
He said, give me two. I'm not driving.
You really did say
He
that.
actually legitimately did say that. That was
Oh,
a great
not bad.
quote.
Not too bad. Not too
I
bad.
don't know why, but I have gum stuck around one of the teeth in my back.
Uh-oh.
It's like attached like a leash. I'm trying to get it off with my tongue.
You're
All right,
going to have to have
let's see
like
your
a
bubble.
root canal. That was incredible. It's been a great segment for you.
That was very Alex.
That was bad. Okay.
Isabel's is good.
Y'all work it a little bit.
All right. All right, what do you got, Steven?
Oh, man, failure to launch.
Not too shabby. You got a little hot sauce in that one?
Ew.
No, we will talk about this after the break. You know?
It's all in the prep work.
Terrible
You gotta like,
person,
spread
John.
it out enough.
I'm not good at blowing
Yeah.
bubbles. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Do you guys remember too when you were in elementary school and we started chewing gum and it was like so cool, but don't swallow it. It's gonna be stuck in you for 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, why
yeah.
did we come up with 7 years? That's not
that's
true.
a good
I don't know
actually.
what you guys.
That's the kind
I
of
just pooped a
misinformation
piece
we
of gum
need
out
now.
last night.
Fantastic. Let it go. Did you blow a bubble?
And you're always like terrified to swallow your gum. It was like this whole thing. And I know like sometimes when I was growing up, if I literally had no other option, I didn't want to throw it on the ground or there was no trash can or whatever, I had to like talk myself into swallowing the gum. Like my throat almost wouldn't do it. It was really bad.
Oh, you were so scared.
Yeah,
weren't
because I
you?
didn't want it to be stuck in my stomach for 7 years. Turns out it's a lie.
Remember like how like rebellious that was too? When it's like,
Right.
oh, I'm gonna chew gum and the teacher's not gonna see me. Now kids are
You
rebelling.
like hide
now.
it under your tongue and everything.
I don't understand why that used to be a rule that we weren't allowed to chew gum at school.
That's-
My
yeah, that's-
school-
obnoxious.
Look at that.
That's not bad. That's not
That's
bad.
a good
That's
one.
not bad. That's
I'm
not bad.
really bad at this.
I'm sorry. I would have to say the best bubble
stuck on
gum
your
What's the
ever.
best bubble gum you think?
Big League Chew.
Big League Chew.
The
is good.
best.
I
The
would
best.
argue the little pink tape gum. I don't know who made
okay.
that. And you
Bubble
pulled
tape?
it out. Was it called bubble tape? Our producers are looking at me like, baby, fact check me. You pull it out. It was Hubba Bubba that made the bubble tape. All right, cool. So you pulled it out and you like clamped down on it. It was like a Scotch tape dispenser. That gum was really good.
You're getting there,
you
Alex.
go.
Let me tell you one thing. I hate the taste of bubble gum.
It's a little fake.
I don't like it. I also don't like cotton candy. Is that
Yeah,
unpopular?
it's kind of a
Wow,
similar
yeah.
taste.
I
I
don't
get
really
that.
like cotton candy that
Me
much.
neither.
It's just straight sugar. What's your favorite gum though?
Okay, fun fact about me. I do not like anything mint.
What?
I hate mint toothpaste, which I do use it now because there's like no other options. But for a very, very long time, I only use cinnamon toothpaste or vanilla toothpaste. And I never chew mint gum because I hate it. I always choose strawberry or cinnamon gum. Oh!
It's not bad.
Very good, John Root. Now see, what's gonna happen to you? It's gonna get stuck in your mustache.
So I got a
Keep going.
third one, so I'm gonna challenge you to a duel.
We're doing 3. This is like when we played Chubby Bunny at Thanksgiving.
Oh, you killed me.
Get
in that.
another one in there. I want to see if you can do it.
I don't
I'm
think
the
we have
man.
enough time for
Come
that.
on, let's get it in, man.
All right, what we got?
I don't know how long we're gonna be doing this for. Whoa!
Oh,
That was a good one. Oh,
Okay,
that's a good
pretty
one.
good.
That's pretty good. The
I do
guys
what I
have
can.
beat the girls, I think.
Do I have a bunch of gum on my face?
You do.
Probably.
No,
Yeah,
it's fine.
this is not good.
This is fantastic.
No, but
I don't know how entertaining this is to watch.
No, I think it's pretty incredible, especially to find out you don't like mint.
Alice has
terrible.
a
You're
very
a terrible
specific
person.
food palate, though.
Yeah.
No mint and chip ice cream, no nothing.
No.
No? Wow.
She also doesn't like condiments, like ketchup or ranch.
She doesn't like water either. I heard that. You're a
I
big
don't like
Dr. Pepper
water.
gal.
I don't like water, and that was so
vegetables.
controversial to say on the Politics account this week. I really ticked a lot of people off. They were like, "Is this a joke?" And I said, "No, it's very real. Water
But
is
hey,
plain."
that's the end of Bubblegum Day for you. Coming up next, brand new episode of The Spillover. See you on Monday.
Welcome to our first ever political correctness and inclusivity training. First off, safety. Just want to make sure that everyone here is jabbed, right? Just kidding, none of my business. So I'm Dylan, I'm your HR rep. A little bit about me. I'm a white man, and I'm so sorry if that makes any of you uncomfortable. On to the first order of business today. We're going to be talking about diversity. And Josh, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Donde está la biblioteca? I'm from Colorado. I learned that from Dora.
Okay, second order of business. This is a mental health friendly workplace. Yes, Alex.
If we're really a mental health friendly workplace, what are we doing about the suicide rate of the birds? Because I saw 2 dead birds in the parking lot yesterday.
Alex, shut up.
Yeah, there's been a really big disregard for the bird lives ever since people in the office started sharing the birds are not real meme. Birds are definitely real. The government's putting chips in their brain, which is making them self-destruct and kill themselves, and we have to be talking about the real issues, or what are we doing here at all? Bird lives matter.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
That's what BLM stands for.
That's not what it stands for.
She brings this up every time.
Why is Mitchell and Pope constantly?
Why are the snacks always feel like they this? don't
I think this went really well. All in all, this is a great place to work, and we're becoming more politically correct every single day.
When a story makes its way into the news, media, and even podcast world, it can start to feel a bit far removed, right? Or sometimes guests or public figures already, whether they're an author, podcaster, business owner, or host. And when I cover a new story, I always get flooded with comments and DMs from CUTESERVATIVES who totally and completely relate to the guest. And that's just on the days when we post a new episode. On other days, the messages keep coming in from girls and young women. Some of them are going through their own crazy story of being fired, broken up with, doxxed, or intimidated because of their conservative beliefs. Other messages are from CUTESERVATIVES who have amazing small businesses or are starting families or jobs in brand new cities. CUTESERVATIVES are everywhere. And you all have such unique stories wherever you are in life. Some of your stories might not get national attention, even though they should, but they're just as real. When I began creating the Politics brand, I was new to Phoenix, Arizona. I had all these ideas I wanted to explore and goals to accomplish. Building a daily show and even a podcast comes with so many pieces that most people don't even begin to understand. But from the start, the brand itself had to be just right. It was clear to me from the very beginning that this show wasn't just mine. I wanted to share it with girls and women everywhere who felt like I did as a conservative. I started a daily show because I didn't see myself in the media options that existed at the time. And I knew I probably wasn't alone in that. What I'm trying to say is that my story is your story. And all of you help make this entire thing possible, from Politics on Instagram, my daily show, or to the Spillover. And I can't thank you all individually, but I did want today to be dedicated to every CUTESERVATIVE. We're highlighting some everyday stories that didn't necessarily make headlines, but are just as compelling, just as important, and 100% representative of who we all are
as CUTESERVATIVES. The episode is going to cover each story individually, so you can expect a little style change on the podcast today. Joining me will be Autumn Schimmer, who was assaulted on the steps of the Supreme Court when she bravely stood for life, Jacinta Riggi, who committed accidental manslaughter, Francesca Arnaldi is a total boss who is a sheriff's deputy and now has a brand dedicated to educating women on self-defense. Then we have a love story between a CUTESERVATIVE and a dudeservative who bonded over their conservatism and love for politics. Hannah and Matthew, they're literally the cutest. And finally, cult survivor Katie Reeves tells her story about leaving ICOC. Never heard of it? You will today. I hope you love each guest as much as I do. I'm Alex Clark, and this is The Spillover, CUTESERVATIVES Spill All. Katie, let's just start with, what is the International Churches of Christ? Is it different from the denomination Church of Christ? Because I've heard that my whole life, and I'm not sure what the difference is if there is one. And just walk us through what it is, and then what are the steps someone goes through to join? And then we'll kind of launch into your story.
Okay, so the International Churches of Christ is not at all associated with the Church of Christ, the normal Church of Christ, I want to say. The International Churches of Christ was created by a guy named Kip McKean, and he started out in Boston, and it was actually called the Boston Sold Out Movement. It started as a house church, and it expanded from there. And a huge part of it is there was this goal that in one generation, they would evangelize the whole world. So they would get everyone to follow them, kind of giving off that idea of that they were the one true church based on their discipleship program. So in order to become a member, as of today anyway, there is a study called the First Principles Study. I believe it is a 12-step study. And it's very standard Christianity in theory. But on top of that, though, they believe in discipleship. You need discipleship. So you need somebody to be there walking beside you your whole life to make sure that you're staying on the straight and narrow path. So that's a huge deal. They also believe you have to be baptized in order to be saved. And on top of that, for the most part, you have to be baptized with this church. So if you came in as like a regular Christian, already baptized, say when you were like 15, 16, if not, early 20s, they will go through this whole study and show you why basically your baptism might not have counted. They give you this idea that you might not have been following the Bible as well as you could have been. And so if you didn't understand what you were doing and you just got baptized and you're still living your way the way that it was, that your baptism probably doesn't count.
So you obviously know a lot. I'm like listening to you talk about this, and it's like you know a lot about this, so-called church. But is that because you were just in it for a long time, you joined later than life, or you were born into it? Like, let's talk about how you got involved with ICOC, how long you were involved.
Yeah, so my parents joined in 98. I was only 3 years old. So I wasn't born into it, but I was very much raised into it. And for a lot of kids that are either born into it or raised into it from a very young age, they're considered kingdom kids. And so like you would at a normal church where you would drop your kid off at like Sunday school, that Sunday school they called Kingdom Kids. And that's where you started. Everything starts. But my parents, as far as my parents joining, my parents were in Vegas. They're 2 law enforcement agents. And my dad was working a lot. My mom was working a lot. But my mom used to take us to IHOP every weekend. Every Saturday. And one time she was sitting at an IHOP and she overheard some of these disciples sitting together doing one of the studies. And my mom was listening, and my mom says that she'd been praying to God. She was like, God, please show me your church. Show me where you want me to be. And she just felt like what she was hearing from their study that she wanted to know more. So when they finished and they were about to get up, she approached them and asked them, what are you guys studying? And so they explained to her, it was just a regular Bible study. And she was like, I'm like super interested in this. And they're like, oh, well, why don't I give you my number and we'll meet up and we'll study the Bible together. And so they did. They met up. They did studies. They studied the Bible.
Was it actually the Bible or was it this?
It was the Bible. I
Okay.
will say that everything in these studies there was scripture used. I very much believe that a lot of the scriptures were cherry picked. A lot of them were out of context. But it was the Bible. There was no other book. There was a written out like how to lead this study. And I remember doing that myself when I studied the Bible with people. But the scriptures and everything were scriptures from the Bible.
So you're in this. You're a toddler. Your mom convinces your whole family they need to join. And how long did you guys go being involved in this cult, ICOC, before someone in your family started realizing something isn't right here? And who in your family was that to first say something's weird?
I can't really put a finger on it. My parents left first, so obviously they had the guts to dip out first. I remember as a teenager, because I was so angst, that there were so many rules that I had to follow as a teenager in the teens ministry.
What were the rules?
So there was no dating. We were not, my parents were very like, you're not allowed to date because if you're going to date, you have to date a disciple. And that's a rule within the church is they want you to not yoke yourselves with non-believers. So you date within the church. It's highly advised. And advice is not like advice where you take it and leave it. Advice is like, I'm giving you this advice. I think you should go get advice. When they say stuff like that, it's you need to go get approval from someone else. And so the advice was very much, I'm telling you, and if you don't follow it, there's probably going to be some kind of repercussions. So
what kinds of repercussions were there if somebody were to break a rule?
There was never like obviously any physical violence or anything weird like that. It was mental. It was spiritual. It was them telling you like, you're really struggling in your faith right now. You really need to get better at your relationship with God. I feel like there's a lot of words in the English dictionary that I just can't see the same because they use them so many times. It was like the lingo. And so it was words like, you're struggling. I feel like you're struggling a lot. Or I'm discouraged I'm discouraged by, you making this choice or telling me this. And I think you need to go get advice for this. And so it was more like, it was a lot of shaming. And in your head, you're convinced that like your salvation is always on the line. I remember feeling I was never good enough for God. And it was so hard to do anything. I felt like every time something bad was happening in my life, it was because I was about to lose my salvation, that God was mad at me, something was wrong, I wasn't spiritual enough. And I was constantly in this like mental warfare that I was being told that I wasn't spiritual enough and I needed to work on my relationship with God. And so it just, it would eat at you. It would make you want to do whatever they're saying because you feel like something's wrong with you and that God's not going to look well on you.
And this is a massive, ICOC is massive. There are hundreds of thousands of members all over the world, right? It's international.
Yes.
Their LA, like I said earlier, their LA chapter alone has over 6,000 members. And I'm just, what's really striking to me is that you talk about this clear mental suffering and manipulation that you were under throughout your entire life. And yet you still somehow found the strength to leave. So talk about the leaving process, the exiting process, because you met your husband, you're married now, you met him while you were in ICOC, right? He was a member also.
Yes.
His family were members, your family were members, you're like heavily in it. So when you find out that your parents are dipping out, are you like, Sean, they're not spiritual? Like what is going through your mind?
So at the point that they decided to leave, I was having doubts myself because I'd already been through so much. I was a disciple and I just felt like nothing was my own choice. And so I was struggling, but I wasn't telling anyone. And so for my parents to leave all of a sudden like they did, I was like, oh, what does that mean? Like, that's interesting. It wasn't this like, I'm upset at you. Like, how could you? My dad, when they did leave, he told me and my sister, he's like, I'm not going to make you leave. Like, you have to choose this. Which I was kind of like, why can't you just make it like, tell us to leave kind of thing. But, he felt like he was doing right up until that point, raising us in this church. He wanted people to guide us to be better people, to, follow God because he thought that, we were following God.
And were you married at this time to your husband or you guys were just dating?
No, we weren't even dating when my parents left. We were not dating. We were friends. And that was it. and his parents actually were discipling partners with my parents. So there was a little connection there.
So were they mad? Were they like, you cannot talk to this girl? Her parents are defectors
the parents
or whatever?
were very much upset that they were leaving. They were very much, it was a big shock to them because they, talked all the time. They had to, they kind of reported to each other kind of thing. And then when my parents decided to leave, they were like, what the heck?
And so your parents leave, you said they left 6 months before you. So it took 6 months for you to say, now I want out?
Yeah.
And then what about your husband?
Oh, yeah. And in that 6 month time, actually, when they left, I was interested in a totally different guy, random guy. And oh my gosh, this is so silly. I really thought he was the one. And I didn't even know him that well, so that's kind of dumb. But I really liked him, and I even introduced him to my parents at some point. And so I was like, you should just tell me you like him. I'm like, Mom, we can't do that. We're not allowed to tell people that we like them. We're not allowed to initiate that relationship.
So what, you have to tell a mentor, leader type of person?
Tell a leader that you like them, and then if they think you're spiritual enough or they think that they're spiritual enough, then, they'll prove it. But if one little thing is off, then it's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should work on your relationship with God. And they kind of like deter your mentality. And so I was deterred often anytime I liked somebody. So when I told my mom, she's like, what? She was like, you should only be getting approval from me and your dad. I'm like, well, that's not the rule. And she's like, what rule? Like, she was totally oblivious to what was going on in my life.
How did you guys figure out that you wanted to leave after your parents?
So not even 6 months, maybe 4 or 5 months into it, I'm telling you, there was this switch. That loser dude just disappeared out of my life. I had always talked to my husband about these guys that I liked, and he would give me advice. And he's like, yeah, that guy, he's immature. He doesn't know what you need. And he didn't like me like that. Like he
thought he didn't.
Yeah, he goes, you were cute, but you were like a hot mess. And so, yeah, so he would give me genuine, like, nah, I don't think it was this. Or he'd be like, no, Katie, like you do these things and you're not right for him because, you're this personality and he's this personality. And that's why it would have never worked out. And for the both of us, just one day something changed. And I started feeling those feelings. I'm like, oh, and I remember I hated myself for it. Because I'm like, I can't lose him. That's my best friend. Like, I would rather deny till death that I had any feelings for him than approach this because they're going to take him away from me. They're going to tell me to stop talking to him. They're going to tell me that I can't sit next to him, that I don't need to be at events that he's at, or I need to be on the other side of the room if he's there. Because that's how they would separate you from people you were interested in. They would just, cut it off. Don't talk to him. Don't text him. Don't call him. None of these things. And I started noticing that he liked me back. So I just asked him. I was like, hey, so do you like me? And he goes, you're not supposed to ask that. You're not supposed to ask that. I'm like, okay. But do you like me? And he goes, well, yeah. I'm like, hey, well, what are you going to do about it? He was like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm like, maybe. So
maybe there's something we could do. We leave this godforsaken place.
Maybe there's something. I mean, maybe we can make this happen. Well, at this point, my sister had gotten wind that she thought I liked him. And so did the church. And I don't know, to this day, I do not know how they figured this out, unless they overheard me and my idiot sister recording ourselves saying that I didn't like him.
Do you think that they the type of people that would monitor, have access to phones?
No.
Would they bug places?
No. I mean, oh my gosh, no. I can't see that. I've never heard anything like that, so I cannot say that that's the case. But
maybe
I know
somebody informed on you.
That's what I thought. So my only thinking is somebody overheard me and my sister, messing around. Because it was the only time it was ever brought up that I liked him, that I was in a conversation of. That and this other girl who liked him had like a suspicion. And I remember her asking me, and I'm like, no. I said no, and I walked away. So I don't know. Somebody told the leader though, and the leader was hot on my collar at that point. I started getting messages from the leader, and she was like, hey, let's meet up at this Starbucks. So I met up with her, and she just plainly asked me, like, so is there anybody you're interested in? I'm like, no. Well, what about him? And I was like, no, I don't like him. And she's like, are you sure you don't like him? I'm like, yeah, I don't like him. I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, how often do you guys talk? So then she started grilling me, like, how much do you guys talk? Are you guys texting? I'm like, yeah, we text like normal. We do our own thing. Well, I don't think you should be talking to him as much. And I'm like, okay, well, cool story, but, I'm not talking to him. Like, I was denying everything. She kept giving me advice for something I supposedly wasn't doing. even though I was. And so she's like, okay, well, let's talk again next week. I'm like, okay. So then a week goes by. And so we met up again, and she starts grilling me even more. And this time she brought reinforcements. She brought a girl that was living with me and who was buddies with all the girls before me who liked my husband. And she was like, yeah, I've seen him, break her heart and break her heart. And, he gets in your head. And
so they got a whole gang together to try to convince you not to be with this guy.
Yeah. So at this point, we're trying to convince me not to like him. And I'm like, I don't like him. They didn't think I was spiritual enough. It didn't matter what he was because I wasn't good enough to date in the church. And so I just didn't want to ruin that friendship. I didn't want them to take him from me. And so I just tried to keep convincing them. So they brought in someone else. They brought in another girl who was actually best friends with him. And they're all telling me all this stuff. And I remember the leader said, you need to know this, but he is a wolf in sheepskin.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. So we go for like 2-3 weeks of this grilling, meeting up nonstop. And it got to 1 week every day. I had to meet up with them and hear from them. And she told me that Wednesday, she was like, you need to make a decision now. You need to decide. Are you going to cut this off or what are we going to do? And I remember she said, it's not going to look good for you if, you can't be straight with me and you can't, just let this go.
Well, that sounds like a threat.
Mm-hmm. And so I said, and so I was like, okay. And then that night I talked to the leader and 2 other women who had no idea what was going on with me, who had no idea what she'd done to me, had no idea what I'd been through. And I just straight up told them that I don't believe in your doctrine and I think it's wrong. And you just want to sit here and focus on who I like and who I don't like. But I don't agree with this and I can't do this anymore. So I'm leaving. And at this point, there was one other person who recently left. So it wasn't this is a huge shocker. So then I decided to leave. And it wasn't until a month later, my roommates all sat me down, read me a scripture totally out of context, and said that I couldn't live with them anymore. And
you were officially shunned.
Yeah, that they didn't want me because we didn't share the same ideas. At this point, though, a week after I'd left, they tried to have one conversation with my husband. This whole time, one conversation with him about dating me and being with me. And he was like, show me in the Bible where it says I can't date her or I can't date her just because she's not in my church. And they're like, well, we don't have that. And he's like, all right, well, then I guess I'm leaving too. He had the means and the opportunity to leave whenever he wanted because of his job. I didn't have that. I didn't have anything. I barely had a job and no friends. And so when they sat me down to tell me that I had to leave, I remember one girl saying, because it was around December, she was like, hey, so don't worry about getting us any gifts for Christmas because we want you to save up money because I know you have to move out soon. I'm like, wow.
So you're conservative and, conservative, even I have talked about how I feel like the left is like a cult. Do you agree with that or do you feel like that's totally off base?
It depends. I think when you get yourself so involved in not politics, but, any political side to the point where they, if you spoke out against them, they would not just make your life a living hell, but they would take things from you or you could lose, finances to where you couldn't support yourself. If they were paying for everything, I think in those cases where you have to agree with everything they say or your livelihood and your ability to live is on the line, then yeah, I believe that is a cult. But I think, if you're just a teenager, listen to everything you read on the internet and believing it and not, seeking that out for yourself and still having the ability to have free thought, and not be persecuted for it. I don't believe that, I think you can be setting yourself up to be getting into a cult mentality. But I don't like to use the word cult in situations where you just don't like something or you disagree strongly. I think it has to be affecting your welfare significantly to be considered that.
So one last thing, Katie, before we wrap up, is if somebody's listening to this who is currently in ICOC, what is your short message to them?
I would say right now, the biggest thing that helped me was when I started getting friends outside of the church. When I had friends that literally looked me in the eye and said, hey, Katie, you're in a cult. And I laughed at them, but, this guy was in my wedding and he's like one of my best friends now. And he was right. And he was definitely one of the few people that I had to lean on when I wanted to leave. So I definitely would say, even if you have to make it a secret and you don't want to share with anyone, having those friends outside of the church can be your only could be your only lifeline at some point.
Katie, thank you so much for sharing your story today on The Spillover.
Thanks.
Fran, you and your partner were working one day in Santa Barbara where you were a sheriff's deputy, and you actually got word about a stolen vehicle. You had the make, the model, the vehicle, the details, the suspect, and then you actually anticipated he would come your way. And then when he did, you initiated a traffic stop. So can you just describe the total chaos that ensued after that traffic stop?
Oh my God, yeah. So my partner was posted up on the highway waiting for this car to come in. He could only go one of two directions, and he came ours. So he saw the car, and the way that our staffing levels are, it's only him and I in our area. So the staffing isn't the best. So we planned out this traffic stop. And when you know it's a stolen vehicle, you just go about it a different way. Like, you don't just walk up and say like, hey, I'm Deputy so-and-so and I stopped you because XYZ. You do what's called a high risk stop or a felony stop. So once you put your car in park, you get out and you draw your firearm. Ideally, you'd have like 4 officers there. That way you can have like a handgun and a long gun and someone on less lethal, just so we have different options. But we unfortunately didn't have that availability. So my partner and I stopped this car, happens to be like in this massive Home Depot parking lot. And the guy gets out at first and like, puts his hands up in the air, all this good stuff. It's totally going with the program. And he like looks around. And if you work in law enforcement, like when someone's looking around, it's not a good thing.
Does that mean he's looking for backup? He has friends hiding or something?
Either that or like he's looking for a place to bolt. He's like, well, where's my nearest escape route? And that's what he did. He started running away. And the partner I was with is like super solid, super squared away, like total inverted triangle, very fit, great partner, definitely someone you want in a fight. And he starts chasing him on foot. And I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not chasing on foot. I'm going to get hurt. Why would I do that?
Sounds like me as a cop.
There's
physical
nothing wrong
activity.
with that.
Yeah, wait, physical activity. I'm not doing that.
So I'm like, I'll just follow in my car. Like if he happens to lose my partner, I'll be able to follow in my car. No big deal. And he zigzags through the parking lot and comes to a hospital that was in the same parking structure. And at that hospital were other police officers from a different jurisdiction, and they had someone they had just arrested who was getting medically cleared at the hospital to be transported to our jail. And they're just waiting outside, waiting for their guy to be ready. And he rounds the corner and sees them, and he sees them and like totally panics and starts running towards my car. So I'm super stoked. I'm like, yes, I'm going to like jump out and tackle him and arrest him. Like every cop's dream, like everyone wants to do that. And I slam on my brakes and I jump out of my car, and my partner grabs him. And out of the corner of my eye, I see my car continuing to drive without me behind the wheel.
What?
Yes. And it was horrible. I mean, like, police aren't everyone's favorite right now. We definitely get picked apart in the media. So of course my first thought is like, oh my God, my car is going to crash. Or what if it crashes into someone and I injure someone? Or like, just like thinking of these headlines that are going to be horrendous. And like, I could lose my job for this. So I start running after my car because we're obviously, liable for everything we do. And the right half of my body makes it in just fine. And the left half doesn't. So
what does that mean by the left half of your body didn't make it into the car?
So like my right butt cheek was sitting down and my left leg is just like slowly getting dragged behind me. It's like totally like, that cartoon like X where you see a character just like stretching.
Yeah, like Elastigirl.
Yes, that was me, except I'm not elastic.
So what do you do?
So I still have to stop my car. It's still like traveling through this parking lot. And I'm like, oh God, please help me. Like, I don't want to crash. This is horrible. And so I end up using just the leverage from my right leg to like heave myself into the car. And while I'm doing that, I hear this loud audible pop. And I'm like, oh, no big deal. Maybe it's just like, like popping a knuckle. Like I was thinking it was something like that. So I stop my car, don't hit anything, super stoked, super proud of myself. And then I get out and I start to take a few steps to get to my partner, and nothing worked below my knee. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, maybe like it's just adrenaline. Maybe I'm super nervous. Like it's obviously a really high stress situation. And it's normal to like have your stress totally worked up. So I'm like, oh, I'm just nervous. No big deal. And I take a few more steps and it's still not working. I'm like, okay, something's totally wrong. And I like look down, start checking myself. Like there's no broken bones. I don't have like bones protruding through my skin. I'm like, but something is very obviously wrong. So I physically braced my knee with both of my hands and like hobbled back to my car. And then someone came over and they're like, Fran, are you okay? I'm like, no, like get me in the hospital. Something's totally wrong. And then we went from there and yeah.
So did you ever catch this suspect?
Oh yeah, he went to jail. The best part about him is, so thanks to the pandemic, the criminal justice system has definitely been affected. And ironically, he was arrested that very same day, earlier that day, for the same charge, felony vehicle theft. And he was released thanks to $0 bail. Thank you, Governor Newsom. And as soon as he got released, he found his way to a rural area, stole another car.
Oh my gosh.
Recommitted the same exact crime. And I encountered him an hour after that happened.
So what did you find out was wrong with your leg? What was the injury?
So my leg was basically being held together by skin.
Oh, so
yeah.
you did. So it was broken?
So it wasn't broken, but like all of the ligaments, all of the tendons, everything, they were either completely gone, or they were torn and just like hanging by a thread.
Oh, sick.
It was disgusting. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the recovery process for that, I imagine, was absolutely brutal. I mean, I can't imagine going from like being fully mobile to completely needing care, because I'm assuming you couldn't move around. So what did you need help with in the recovery process? What was going on there?
The recovery was horrendous. So it was rough because since it was an on-duty injury, we have to go through like workman's comp. And if anyone listening has been injured at work, you know workman's comp is horrible. It took 3 weeks just to get an MRA to find out what was wrong with me. And then an additional 2 months after that to get surgery to fix it. But yeah, like just like what you said, I went from this very active, very like highly functioning lifestyle of like 12, 13, 14-hour work days. And then when I get off work, I'd go work out at Orange Theory, which is like super high intensity interval gym, doing everything myself, like a normal 30-year-old person would be doing, to I can't drive anywhere. I can't take a shower by myself. I can't change my clothes by myself. I can't do anything. So to go from like this super high functioning lifestyle to needing someone to basically do everything for me, it was horrible. Luckily, my husband is very patient. But it was a huge struggle. It was like definitely a difficult change of like mindset and just like being patient with myself. And
so
like
how long were you totally like bedridden or house ridden or whatever you would call it?
So I got injured on April 20th. I had surgery, I think July 1st, and I went back to work light duty. So just like desk job, like filing paperwork, September 1st.
How was your mental state during that time, not being able to work and be an active police officer?
At first, it's nice to have some downtime, don't get me wrong. But then like, you start to feel just like this huge loaf, like you're just rotting away at your house. You don't feel like you're doing anything proactive with your life. It's a horrible feeling to go from like, total opposites going from one to another. I hated it. It was rough.
And so tell me about Thin Blue Line.
Thin Blue Lifestyle?
Sorry, yes.
You're good.
Tell me about Thin Blue Lifestyle.
So I started Thin Blue Lifestyle because I had all of this downtime and like being off work. I'm like, well, I don't just want to sit here and like rot away into nothingness. I wanted to do something productive with my time. So I figured, why not look into trainings? Why not do this? Why not make myself a better partner for when I come back to work? And while I'm looking into this, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, we have so much training and knowledge as law enforcement officers. And so many people treat it as like, it's like this big secret, or like you have to be a part of like the cool kids club to know this information. And in my mind, I'm like, that's dumb. Why do I not want to share this with other people so that they can, be more safety conscious? And it just went from there. Like I just totally dove into it, and it's all information that like I wish someone would have taught me when I was, you know, in college or a young female or just a young person in general, because why wouldn't you want to be more safety conscious?
Absolutely. And so what topics do you cover on social media, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so people can find me on Instagram. It's just at Thin Blue Lifestyle, no spaces, no underscores, nothing like that. And we just go like literally everything. We go over basic medical stuff, like how to apply a tourniquet, or like how to stop the bleed on different parts of the body, or how to put together a basic medical kit for you or your family, or to leave in your car, or how to put together like a go bag that you can leave in your car that if you have to up and go in a moment's notice, you'll at least be good for a few days. You know, we talk about like concealed carry stuff, like basic firearms fundamentals and safety, and things that when I was a newer female deputy getting into like firearms and stuff, there was no one there to tell me like, oh, hey, you can still look cute and like carry your gun too. And someone that I really look up to, and she's been an amazing mentor, is Emily from Style Me Tactical.
Dude, we love Emily Valentine.
She's awesome. I love her. I met her in person when my husband and I were in DC. And she's amazing. She's been like a great mentor. I'm like, I love her style. Our styles are very similar. I'm like, okay, I definitely like, I loved the tips that she would give. So I like to give like a little bit of fashion advice, or like, oh, if you're purse carrying, do this instead. Like a lot of things that when I was new to this whole safety conscious, self-reliant journey, I wish someone had told me and helped me with, and now I'm helping other people. And I mean, it's super fulfilling. Most of the time it's more fulfilling than police work. So I can't complain.
I think that's so awesome. And I love that you make, you know, police work seem so much more relatable. And I like, you know, humanizing a police officer, I think is so important in this culture right now. And just the stigma and the stereotype of, you know, what someone is like and their personality is like that decides to pursue a career in policing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of law enforcement officers out there, like it's intimidating. A lot of them are like very macho, and, you know, at first glance, they're not the most welcoming people. And we're not like that. At least, you know, a lot of the people I work with aren't like that. So to show them like, hey, I'm just Fran. Like, I'm just here to help you and to help you feel more like confident on this whole self-reliancy journey. And I'm not here like masquerading myself as like, you know, this most tactical girl, because that's not me. It's not my style. And I know like I totally have a huge amount to go on this journey of, you know, firearms fundamentals and all of these skills. And that's a big part of Thin Blue Lifestyle, is like putting it out there that you don't have to be amazing at this. It's totally fine to start and be new at it and not feel comfortable, and to build your skills up. And that's what it's all about, because everyone has to start somewhere. So to be intimidated by all of these other like larger accounts, or like, oh, I want to go and ask for help, but I don't know where, like, cool, come to me, come to Thin Blue Lifestyle, because we all start somewhere, and, you know, we're here to help everybody learn and grow.
I love the resiliency and the resourcefulness and just the creativity behind Thin Blue Lifestyle. It's exactly like when I started Poplitics, my daily show where I cover pop culture on Instagram and entertainment news from a conservative perspective. I just wanted to create something that I wasn't seeing, you know, in a movement that I loved, in the conservative movement. And so I just made it myself, and you really did the same thing with Thin Blue Lifestyle. So congratulations. I love following you. You're so much fun. I highly recommend following Fran. She's an absolute hoot on social media. And you totally get my sense of humor and everything when we're interacting on DMs and stuff, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Hannah and Matt, thank you guys so much for both being here to share your very unique love story. First of all, I want to start with, when and where did you meet?
Absolutely. So about 3 years ago, I had just gotten a new job at this Jewish organization that did a lot of work on Israel education and fighting anti-Semitism. And actually, my very first day on the job, they had asked me to go to Philadelphia for this fundraising gala. I said, all right, sounds good. And I took a train, and I get there, and I'm meeting a lot of new people, some of my coworkers. And actually, one of those people was Hannah. So she worked at the same organization that I had just started at. Yeah. We didn't really have a chance to talk all that much at the beginning because it was so crazy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of galas are busy and crazy.
Yeah.
And I know you were there kind of
Yeah,
before there.
I worked on the event side of things, and you just meet people. And so we were meeting new coworkers. I'm like, okay. And it was actually funny. One of our coworkers asked me later if I thought he was cute, because they knew I was Christian and he was Christian, and actually kind of said, oh, I think he's too young for me. But then fast forward a year later, and we were at a wedding from one of my best friends who happened to be his boss. And it was a Jewish wedding. We were the only Christians there, the only single Christians there. And it kind of just threw us together.
Yeah.
And
it was incredible because, somebody had mentioned to me earlier, like, hey, Matt, like, people meet people at weddings all the time. And I was like, this is a super Jewish wedding, like very, very Jewish wedding in Brooklyn. There was no way I was going to meet anybody there. I told myself, like, there's no way. Like, I'm just there to have fun and celebrate my boss.
And then you saw Hannah again. You're like, wait a minute, I've met you before.
Yeah. And so I had seen her. And so, it was fine at first. I didn't think much of it until the music starts. And we all know when the music starts, people want to dance.
He loves to dance, Alex. Like, this guy can dance so well. So it was kind of like one of those things. He starts dancing, and then, I don't know, we just ended up dancing with each other and really hit it off.
Yeah, we just spent the entire evening together. We went and took some shots. She actually like grabbed me and was like, let's go grab another shot. And I was like, I don't know. But I was like, she's looking really cute tonight. So I had to.
So when did you find out that each other was conservative?
So I think it was like on our first date, we were like talking about all the things that people tell you not to talk about on a first date. But at this point, when I was dating, I was like, I want to be really intentional, and I don't want to date someone who doesn't align with me on the things that matter and the non-negotiables. So I kind of we just laid it out on the table, and I was talking about my political beliefs, and he agreed. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Like,
Matthew, when you heard her say, these are my beliefs, this is very important to me, I'm a conservative, as a guy, what was your immediate reaction to hearing a girl say that and be so sure of being conservative?
It was a major sigh of relief, because my track record of dating, nobody that I dated in the past was really conservative. Granted, like, I wasn't super strong. Actually, like, this is a side story, but in college, I was actually very liberal. So I didn't really care about, I just assumed everybody believed what I believe. And that's a whole different story for another time. But by the time I ended college and kind of began my professional career, I had become more conservative. And so once I finally spoke with Hannah and we talked about it, I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. As a Christian, as a conservative, there are some values and beliefs that for me are extremely important to find in a partner. So it was a major sigh of relief, to be honest with you.
Okay, and so in what ways, 2020 happens, the pandemic happens, how did your all's work environment actually get worse?
You want me to go? Yeah. So we actually were one of the first organizations, at least in on the coast, like New York, that like went remote. And before the pandemic happened, like with the election, a lot of people at work were talking about things, and we had a lot of colleagues who would post, and they were liberal, and there was kind of this like privilege for them that they could post whatever they wanted on their personal social medias. And us as conservatives in the organization really weren't given that same kind of privilege. Like we
at the Jewish organization?
Yeah. So we kept everything like, especially because your social media also represented the organization. So there was this, you had to be professional online. So it was just this weird thing. So that started when like election season was coming up. And I'm based out of New York. So New York is, as we know, pretty liberal. So that was like something I've experienced like for a long time. But then everything started happening, escalating, and it just got worse because things got heightened. And then, it just kind of was like a snowball effect for us. And we also didn't get to see each other in person for 3 months during 2020 with like lockdowns.
Actually, we haven't mentioned this, but we are long distance. We've been long distance the entire relationship. So we really got hit hard. Before the pandemic, we had seen each other at least every 2-3 weeks, maybe once a month, whether, because I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. She was living in New Jersey. And so we really had to figure it out. And once the pandemic hit, it became a lot harder to see each other. I had a traveling job with my organization, so I was able to make it work pre-pandemic. But then things became a lot more difficult after the pandemic. So,
but like with your saying about like the work environment and stuff, like lines kind of got drawn. People got harsher in their beliefs, I think, when it came to like the political side of things. And I don't know if Matt felt this way, but I felt like I couldn't talk or like out loud at work. But that also kind of fueled me to be stronger in my beliefs because I was feeling so isolated.
You actually had a very close friend confront you. What prompted that confrontation?
Yeah, so it was a message on like Instagram. We were texting about something that had to do with nothing. It had like just a regular conversation, and out of nowhere, it turned, and she first like really cornered me about like, oh, I think it's really important that you vote a certain way in this election, and like, are your parents going to vote for Trump and all this stuff? And then she like pivoted it to abortion and like, what's your stance on abortion? So it's just kind of this weird, I don't know, I felt like completely taken off guard. This is someone I've known for a really long time, and I didn't even know how to respond because I was like, we were just talking about, normal things. And then out of nowhere, I just felt like I got cornered, and it was really hard. I'm not usually a confrontational person, and I'm someone that really treasures my relationships. So I felt like she didn't know me at all and was starting to question who I was, even though she's known me for a long time. And the abortion one hit really hard because of Matt's story. I'm going to let him share that with you.
Like 2 seconds. My mom had a very complicated pregnancy, and multiple doctors were telling her to abort because if not, neither I nor my mother would survive. But my mom had recently became a born again Christian, and she said, no, God gave me this child. I'm having this child. After an extremely arduous birth, and she went into a coma. Thank the Lord, I survived. I had to have like emergency surgery, and there's this photo of me as an infant with seemingly hundreds of cables attached in and around my body. That is very emotional for my family, even till this day. But I think that story for me carries a lot of weight in how I view abortion. And I actually, I remember watching your recent podcast with the abortion survivor, and I just think it's just one of those things that's extremely important to me.
Yeah. Did your mom survive, Matt?
Absolutely. Yeah. She is she's here with us. That's another miracle.
She's amazing.
She's my number one advocate, my favorite person in the world, obviously besides Hannah. And I love her so much. And she's very proud of me. I'm an only child. And so yeah.
Yeah.
So Hannah, when this girlfriend of yours had confronted you about being pro-life, had you always been pro-life, or did you become pro-life after dating Matt and hearing his story?
So I've always been pro-life. I grew up in a strong Christian household. And for me, it was just a no-brainer because I value life, and so does the faith that I'm a part of. And I think it's something that never came up in conversation with this friend before. But all of a sudden it did. So when that happened, I did send her a really long message explaining, look, I'm not supportive of abortion, because if abortion happened, the person that I'm in love with would not be here today.
Wow. What did she say to that?
Honestly, I don't I'm trying to remember the exchange, and she kind of sort of said, oh, I didn't know or something. But it didn't really change much after that. After that, we really just kind of fell out of talking. Yeah. But wow. I did bring up Matt's story because I'm I have an instance that's really hits close to home for me, in addition to my already my conviction I had prior to that.
And, that also could have been planting a seed for her as well. Hearing that, may not have changed her mind right then in the moment. But who knows? Who's to say a few months down the road, a few years down the road, that couldn't have an effect. And you mentioned so much of your relationship being long distance, even your engagement. So I am curious what advice you guys have for listeners who are in a long distance relationship, other CUTESERVATIVEs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have no idea how many times people say long distance relationships are impossible. Don't do it. it might not be for everybody, but for those who really want to make it work, I think communication is so important. We FaceTime every single day. We always FaceTime in the morning, at least, and at least at night, and pray together. Because that's something that's really important to have that kind of Christian centerpiece in our relationship. I would also say, anytime that we're together, to make it intentional. I know that in today's generation, it's super easy to be on your phone while at dinner, or like, be distracted in what's going on. But even if it's for a day, even if it's for a weekend, make every single moment intentional, because you never know. Once you guys are, hopefully one day, you and your partner will be closer together and not have to deal with long distance.
Right. So Matt, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was gonna say also to the CUTESERVATIVEs, like be creative. We found like a bunch of different apps that we could do, like this one called House Party. So you can both be on it, but you can play games. So you like can do Pictionary and you can do these different like games together. So like if you only have FaceTime available, you like, shake it up. Also watch the same Netflix series. We did that. We did so you'd like be on FaceTime, but watch the same show. So you have to it's work, but it can be fun. You just have to get creative with it. Yeah.
I've heard some friends of mine that have been in long distance relationships. They had a cool idea. They would FaceTime each other and then they would order DoorDash or Postmates food from the same restaurant. So for example, they would both order something from Cheesecake Factory and then they would eat it together and like have a candlelit dinner set up or whatever at each of their apartments. And then it would be kind of like, oh, we're having dinner together, which is honestly, it's kind of depressing. But like, I love the creativity and that you do what you do to make it work. And that makes me think, Matt, hearing you talk about it and how intentional you've been with Hannah, is it fair to say that, when people talk about, long distance is impossible, I feel like if a guy wants to make it work, he's going to make it work.
Absolutely. And even before I met Hannah, I had come to the realization, I had just graduated from college, probably 6 months before I met Hannah, that I'm dating to marry. I'm not dating to just have fun. I'm not dating for pleasure. I'm really dating to start a life with somebody. And if you find somebody that you really see that with, which for Hannah, really only like first 2 months, I could tell, first 2-3 months, I could tell she was going to be the one. If you really want to make it work, you're going to make it work.
Now, what was it about her though that made you think this girl's the one?
Well, number one is kind of what we alluded to earlier with the values and the fact that we also are in the same field, fighting anti-Semitism, talking about Israel, talking about all these complex issues.
I love that because it's like you guys are both running your own race, but then you can come together. You guys are both working towards the same goal. Then you can run the race together.
Absolutely. That's something that's extremely important to us. And also, I just love her for her heart of a servant. And, she's very involved in her church. And that's something that I want my spouse and also the mother of my kids to be that leader and to be that example. So
premarital counseling, is that a yes for you guys as you're in your engagement period or you're not doing that?
So that's a yes. We're actually in it currently. So We've had some sessions. It's good. I think that people underestimate it. It's going to be hard. You have to talk about things, but I think it's better to talk about all this stuff before you get married and then it happens. I've heard too many stories.
Yeah. Also,
it's not good. Talk about everything first.
Also, there's this stigma that only if you're having relationship issues that you should do premarital counseling. Yeah. No, if you have minimal issues, you should still do premarital counseling because you never know what's behind the closet. You never know what will come out.
Did you find out anything yet about each other that surprised you that you didn't know? You don't have to say what it was, but has there been things that you're like, you know what? We never talked about that.
Not yet, but we did do this temperament exam that they gave to us. And it was really interesting to find that out that our temperaments are very evenly matched on things. But there are certain areas. And when they were reading it back, we were both like, oh yeah, that's you. Oh yeah, that's me. So that was interesting to find out how close our whatever scores were on that.
I love that. That's going to give so many people hope that are trying to find their CUTESERVATIVE or their dude-servative. And I think hearing from you guys, these are real people that watch politics just like you, that listen to the Spillover just like you, that are going through the same things, that have gone through the same things, and now they have a happy ending. And, really, your story, actually, I wouldn't even say an ending, but your story is just starting to be written. So that's so exciting. Thank you, Matt and Hannah, for coming on the Spillover. And congratulations, by the way, in your naming your firstborn, Alex, right? Boy or girl can be Alex.
It does work both ways. And we do have some cute conservative friends who are single. So if anybody is looking,
I love that.
Love to be a matchmaker. So
we're already thinking of our single friends going to our wedding
that we can set up. Because we know.
Good. And I think that's the right thing to do, actually. I think that those of us that are in relationships or are married already, we cannot forget about our single friends and helping them and thinking about who do I know, you know, like a cousin's friend or anyone, just who do I know that I can set up? Because I think that also is such a better way for people to find other people to date than doing dating apps. Like having people in common that can vouch for them and say, this is somebody that has good character. I think that's important. Matt and Hannah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Autumn, let's set the stage a little bit here. It was your first week working for Students for Life. You were part of a group that was protesting and counter-protesting on the steps of the Supreme Court. Going into that day, were you nervous about being around this pro-abortion group, or were you really just excited?
So I was a little nervous, but more excited than nervous. So we had a group of about 10 people, some guys, some girls. So it was a good mix. And we were just staying in an Airbnb really close to the Capitol. So we were ready to respond whenever something was happening. And we heard that this protest was going on. So we're like, well, we have to be there. And so we headed over and we were pretty excited leading into it.
And explain what the protest was, who this pro-abortion group was that you guys were going to counter-protest, and how big was their group compared to your Students for Life group?
Yeah, so like I was saying, we had a group of just about 10. So we were a small group, and the protest was being led by NARAL. So obviously a huge pro-abortion group, and we show up and we don't know what we're showing up to. So we have our signs and our megaphone, and it's probably over 100 people. So we're very far outnumbered, and they're all right in front of the steps of the Supreme Court. So we go just right across the road on the sidewalk, and we began holding our signs in protest. And they saw us coming because we came running on with our bullhorn going and with our signs, and they knew we were there from the moment we showed up.
What were some of the things that you guys were shouting or saying in the megaphone and the posters that you were holding? What were the things that, you know, possibly could have triggered this group?
Yeah, so we were in DC right before Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed to the Supreme Court. So a lot of our messaging was confirm ACB, like why are these feminists protesting a woman? Listen to pro-life woman, hear pro-life woman, very pro-woman, and then also pro-life messaging. So it makes sense that that's really what triggered them. And then also a lot of the pro-life language of we must defend human life. This baby has a heartbeat, that type of language as well.
So you're just doing your job, advocating for life, and then this woman comes up to you. What was this pro-abortion woman saying and doing?
Yeah, so at this time, we had crossed the street and headed over to the steps of the Supreme Court. So we were in the midst of it with all the NARAL protesters as well. We felt safe going over there. Had some guys with us. There are people recording. There's a police presence. So we go over there and I'm holding a sign and it says, I can't believe these feminists are protesting a woman. And then it had hashtag confirm ACB. So very blatantly going against everything that they were out there for. Yeah. And this woman just came up out of the crowd about my age. So I'm about 25 and I'd say she was about my age. And she comes up to me and just asked me why I'm holding that sign. What do I think feminism means to me? And I go, well, I don't think it means that we empower women by telling them they need to kill their children. And that was basically all I said to her before anything further happened.
And so how does it escalate from that point? When could you tell that the situation was escalating, I should say?
Yeah. And so that's what's interesting. I couldn't tell it was escalating. So that was basically our only exchange. She just came up to me, asked why I was holding the sign and what feminism meant to me. And I told her. And then, so we're probably only about like 3 feet away from each other. We're pretty close. And I'm with my group. And so I respond and she doesn't say anything back to me. She's just staring me down. So I'm like, I'm just going to keep my eyes straight ahead. And then out of nowhere, she just punched me in the face. We hadn't talked for probably about a minute or two.
Holy crap. It just came out of absolute nowhere?
It really did.
And so was it a hard punch? Like she put all her weight behind this punch, or it was kind of like she was a little hesitant?
She was definitely hesitant. So I thankfully wasn't hurt by it. And I think even if it did hurt, it's like my adrenaline was going so much even before that happened. It was enough. I like stumbled backwards, and she actually ironically like ripped off my mask when she hit me in the face. And I just stumbled backwards, and like, I don't fully remember it, but there's a little bit of a video clip, and I just kind of stumbled backwards. I kind of just stand there for a second because I'm stunned. I can't believe this just happened. And then I just started crying, and I was so overwhelmed, and it was a very crazy experience.
Were you saying anything to her when you started crying, or were your friends that were in Students for Life saying anything? Like, why would you do that?
So she fled right into the crowd. She hit me and like did not look at me.
What a coward.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I said too. I didn't even have the opportunity to say anything to her.
And so did you guys immediately go find the police? What happens next?
Yeah. So we are like, right by the steps still. Police are pretty close by. So one of my managers, he goes over, and because he was recording this all too while it was happening, but the camera wasn't right on me when it happened. And so he goes running over to the police and is like, hey, one of our coworkers just got assaulted. And they were asking me, do you know what this girl looked like? Any like descriptive like information that I could give, but I was so overwhelmed. I really couldn't remember. And she had fled into the crowd. I was like, she's a girl about mid-20s, brown hair, had her hair up, was wearing a white t-shirt. And it was like a super, super hot day. All of us are so sweaty and gross. And so we were talking to the police, and they're asking me if I want to press charges, if they want me to go find the woman that hit me. And so I tell them, like, I don't really want to press charges.
Why not?
I was really overwhelmed at the time. I just wanted to move on from it. So it was my first week in the job, and I didn't want the whole punching situation to be what defined me.
That's so interesting, because I feel like I would have done the opposite. I would have been like, yeah, like I would have been all over social media. Like, I'm the girl that got punched, because it shows how insane these pro-abortion women are, and how they don't care about treating women respectfully. And I just feel like it would have made such a good example out of that to just open people's eyes. Do you regret not pressing charges, or you still feel good about that decision?
So I still feel good about not pressing charges. I was super vocal about it on social media. My like Twitter blew up, my Instagram blew up. I was just getting comments from a bunch of pro-abortion people. They tracked us down and found our Instagrams.
And so were they like, I'm so sorry she doesn't represent us, or were they defending this psycho?
Oh, they were defending her, coming for
really?
me.
What were they saying? Yep. You deserve it?
Like some of that, but then also the disgusting language of like, I eat fetuses for breakfast.
Sick.
Or like all the very gross messaging that you see from kind of the Gen Z pro-abortion people.
They just do that, I think, to shock us. They know that it like gets under our skin, so they just like to say that crazy, outlandish stuff.
100%. It's all for the shock reaction and the factor that they just want to get you riled up.
So it didn't, the punch didn't hurt you in the moment. You decided not to press charges. You were vocal on social media, but how did the assault affect you afterwards? Did you struggle with wanting to go to any other marches or protests going forward?
Yeah, so I was definitely hesitant, and still somewhat am. I actually haven't been back to the Supreme Court for anything since, so that was September of 2020. So, and I live in Chicago, and there's been opportunities for me to go to some protests, but I haven't. And it is a little bit of the hesitancy of what's going to happen, because Chicago is just as liberal as DC is. And the idea of what could happen, it definitely does scare me, kind of whether I like to admit it or not.
Were you diagnosed with PTSD or anything after that incident?
No, I wasn't. And I actually went to the doctor like for a physical examination after, just to make sure I was okay. And I was. But But yeah, it's still like, it's funny talking about it right now. It still feels like it's a situation that didn't happen to me. I feel very like removed from it almost. Like, it's very interesting. Like when I was like reading the articles that came out or anything, I was like, wait, that actually happened to me? That's what was really weird for me to grapple with.
Are you still involved with Students for Life?
Yes, I am. So that was my first week. So now I've been there for over a year.
Wow. And so is everybody pretty understanding at the office? Like, okay, Autumn is not going to be the one that we, send out in the trenches again for a little bit till she's ready. Everybody's been nice about it.
Yeah. And everyone was like, I can't believe you didn't quit after that happened. Like everyone was so worried I was going to quit. But I was like, no, I'm like, that made me so much more fired up to want to do this job because I'm seeing firsthand just how radical and to the like lengths they are willing to go, the pro-abortion crowd. If they're willing to be violent just to a random stranger on the street, then it's no wonder that they're okay with abortion.
I love that, Autumn.
It all just made sense.
It just shows that CUTESERVATIVES are not quitters. We are in this fight.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you hope other CUTESERVATIVES can learn from your story of standing for life? I mean, after getting literally knocked down, but then choosing to be the much bigger person towards the person who wronged you.
Yeah. So like you said, always just be the bigger person. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Be vocal on social media. You'll make connections with other pro-life friends. You'll learn about other pro-life organizations. You just can't be afraid, even though it is very scary. You're not in the fight alone, like the media makes it out to be. You do have people on your side, and we're ready to support you.
Autumn, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes, thanks, Alex.
Jacinta, your story starts when you were 17 on your way home one summer afternoon in 2018. And basically, it should have been one of the best summers of your life. You were young, nearing the end of high school, and it was beautiful and warm outside in Idaho. At one point, the route required you to yield before making a left turn off of a busy road. There was a lot of traffic because a train had just crossed the tracks and held up the oncoming cars. But finally, you saw a clear opening. You make the turn. And out of nowhere, your life changes literally forever. Can you tell us what happened next?
Yeah, so I make that left turn and instantly there's just a huge bang, a loud bang, and my car completely turned and I reared, I'll mention it, but there are so many miracles that happen throughout this day. But I reared towards the a ditch, but my car actually didn't go into the ditch. It stopped before. And all of a sudden, I'm looking around and the airbags are all off. All the airbags in the back. And I'm like, what just happened? I'm sitting there in complete shock. I had no idea what had just happened. I knew I hit something or someone, but I had no idea that it was that bad at all. You never imagine it that it would be that bad. And yeah, all of a sudden, probably about 30 seconds later, a man is coming to my door. My car actually called 911 automatically. I was driving a Kia, automatically called 911, automatically people came to come rescue me, and there was tons of people around. Tons of people stopped at the railroad track, so everyone was watching. And yeah, a man came and opened the door, got me out, and it was traumatic, that's for sure.
Did you know immediately what had happened, or were you disoriented?
No, so I was disoriented. I was sitting in the car in complete shock. Didn't know if I should cry, scream. I think after about 25 seconds, I started screaming.
Why were you screaming? When you walked out, what did you see?
So my hands are shaking, but every time I tell this story, it's just, brings it all back. But I get out of the car and this man is helping me. He's such a good man, but he was trying to make sure I didn't see something. And he was pushing me and making me go across the road, but I saw it right away. And probably about 10 or 15 feet away, there's just a body lying there. And it was so graphic, just it's just planted in my brain. I'll never forget that moment, but his head was on the ground and there was blood just everywhere. And it was traumatic and I'll never forget it. But yeah, I just saw him there and I knew at that second I literally just hit a man and he died instantly and I just killed someone.
What was your first thought, to call your parents or call 911? I mean, your car kind of called 911 for you, but what was going through your mind?
I was freaking out. I wasn't thinking about my parents or anything. It literally felt like a nightmare. Like that's what, shock is too. Like you have no idea that that's actually real. It doesn't seem like a reality. No one ever like teaches you how to deal with trauma or trauma happening to you, So once it happened, the guy was like, what's your family's phone number? And he called for me. He did all that for me. And while he was doing it, I was just staring across the street at a man. And then when the cops came, at the man on the ground, and his name was Chad. So if I mentioned Chad, that's him. But I was just staring, and his body was lying on the ground, blood everywhere. And then eventually the fire department came, and I saw him put him in a body bag, bring the body bag away. Like, I was in shock. I had no idea. Like, I literally just hit somebody. But yeah, he called my family. That man called the family for me. So I was grateful for that.
Did Chad's family come to the scene? Did you meet them, or that wasn't later?
No, so they didn't live in the state. And he wasn't wearing a helmet. So that's like why he died instantly.
So he was on a bike?
He was on a motorcycle, and yeah, so it's not, you don't have to wear a helmet in Idaho on a motorcycle. And he was on his way here to work. And yeah, the parents they got a phone call. And that was a huge thing that I was, having to deal with. Like, I'm going to be the reason why his family gets a phone call today saying your son has passed away, your son is dead. And yeah.
Did they have you go to the hospital and get checked out and everything after the scene, or did you have to file a report on the scene?
I did have to file a report on the scene, which was, obviously they were so nice, but it's like you don't want to be answering all these questions about yourself. So luckily they waited until my family came and my mom answered for me. And I was just sitting in the car with my head on her lap, just in complete shock.
Were your parents saying things to you like, Jacinta, this isn't your fault, it was an accident, or what were they saying?
Yeah, so I know my brothers showed up first, and my brother just hugged me and wouldn't let go of me. Then my mom showed up. My dad was at work, and my brothers were like, we need to call Dad. We need to let him know what happened. And my mom's like, do not. He drives for a living. Basically, he's a salesman. And so she's like, he's going to get in a car accident if he hears what had happened. So she called him, and she's like, pull over, honey, pull over. He pulled over, and he was just like, I'm on my way, freaking out. I'm the only girl in the family with 6 older brothers. So my brothers were ecstatic. My brother lives in New York. He was like, I'll fly out and help you, and we'll make this all right. And my mom's like, just repeating, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. But I mean, I didn't believe any of it at first, of course.
When the initial shock wore off, what emotions were you overcome by?
Well, the shock lasted for about 3 days. So I was in bed staring at the ceiling for literally 3 days. And I remember people coming in bringing flowers, or people coming in and my mom with them and just talking about what happened. And I don't remember any of it. I was literally in bed for 3 days staring at the ceiling, thinking about, the family being called and the family being, like I said, they've passed away. And so after the shock wore off, I just remember having a heavy, heavy weight on my shoulders. Every time I left the house, I went to church after that, and I just remember I felt like everyone was staring at me, and obviously they weren't, but I had like this heavy, I felt like it was a heavy secret, but everybody knew about it in my town. I grew up in a small town, so just a heavy weight that was on my shoulders, like feeling like, after something like that happens, after you kill someone, it's life-changing. It really is.
Were you afraid of repercussions? Like, were you like, oh my gosh, am I going to go to jail? What happens?
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to go to jail. But then luckily I was 17 and I wasn't turning 18 until October, and this happened in June. And the family, well, the mom at least was she's a saint in my books. She's a beautiful, beautiful, and she's one of the best people I've ever known, honestly.
When and how did you find out that this man's family was not going to take any legal action against you?
So I was freaking out, and I obviously was, dealing with the shock. And once the shock kind of started to wear off, it was about a month later, my mom and my dad sat me down, and they're like, we have something to tell you. And I was like, what is it? And they were like, so they have ruled it to be your fault, because we weren't sure before. And so they're like, they've ruled it to be your fault, which just brought back everything. All the shock brought back was brought back to me. And yeah, so they sat me down and they were so good and they hid everything from me, like all of the insurance stuff. But I was also just like, why? Like, how are these people not suing me, or, you know, all this stuff, like taking action against me? Like, they must hate me. I remember thinking, like, they must hate me so much. Like, I'm hated so much by these people. But then I was contacted by his mom. And
how did she contact you?
I think my mom found her email and reached out to her. And then ever since, she emails me all the time.
What did that first email say?
She was just re-emphasizing, this was not your fault. And she said, ever since my son, he was in his 40s, she said, ever since my son told me he got a motorcycle, I was waiting for that call to say, your son is dead. Your son has passed away in an accident. And she said she was just waiting for it because her husband lost a leg in a motorcycle accident. So she just kept emphasizing to me, it wasn't your fault. This happened for a reason. God had a plan. I mean, she would send me care packages in college.
Wow.
Like, she literally is the best thing ever. I haven't talked to his father or anything. I know he was pretty upset about it at first, but she is just the best woman. And she actually lives in Arizona, so I'm hoping to meet her one day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously that must have been a relief to hear, just that this woman had forgiven you, even though you accidentally killed her son.
Yeah.
But that obviously doesn't change the fact that you have to live with this experience for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So what has helped you cope? Have you done therapy? Did you have to go through anything like that?
So luckily my mom is a psychiatrist, and she has been for like 20 years. And
Wow.
so she has been, you know, the best thing. She, you know, basically does therapy for a living. And so that helped me a lot. So I never went to therapy. I never felt like I needed it because my faith was my therapy and God was my therapy. And I found peace through that. Yeah.
That's amazing. What did it look like for you to lean into your faith during this?
I mean, my faith had always been I grew up a traditional Catholic, and so every single day at school, you know, you have catechism classes and you're taught about God's goodness and God's justice. And so I remember I would go to church all the time. I mean, that Sunday after it happened, I went to church because that was the only place I could find peace. You know, I knew that the worst thing that I could do was tear myself away from God, because I've seen it done. And I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't tear myself away from him. And so I was like, I need to go to God with my suffering and with my pain, because it's the only way I'm ever going to be able to, you know, not get over it, but just deal with it.
In what ways has God's grace continued to impact you all these years after the accident?
I mean, I always say, and I know my family knows, I repeat this all the time, but I always say God is so good. I mean, my mom always tells me there's a reason why you were chosen. Like, there's a reason why God at that exact moment in time decided, I'm going to take Chad's soul, but I'm going to let you survive. And I know there's a reason for it. So my entire life I've been like, and then even before the accident, I was like, there's something I'm meant to do and I don't know what it is. And so whether it be like this podcast, you know, and telling my story to people, or working at Turning Point, you know what I mean? His grace has been so good to me, and my life has been so good. And sometimes I think about it like, I don't deserve this, especially for what happened. But now I know that it happened for a reason, and, you know, Chad was chosen and I was chosen to live.
Obviously, this didn't happen that long ago. It was 2018. But since the you brought up a turning point, since the accident, you graduated high school, you've gone to college, and now you've started working here at Turning Point USA. Does it feel like that day just happened yesterday, or that it was just another lifetime at this point?
When I think about it, like right now, when I think about it, it's like PTSD, you know, like my heart's beating 1,000 miles a second. And with PTSD, you live in the moment every single time you think about it. Every single time I pass by a motorcycle or people even bring up accidents, my mind automatically goes to that day. So it feels like a lifetime ago, but at the same time, it feels like its own life. Like it literally was a nightmare, you know? It didn't seem like it was part of my life. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like it was in another world, you know, where that happened. But I've dealt with it so well now that it's obviously become a part of my life. And not a good part of my life, but definitely not something as negative as it was at the time.
Part of your testimony, I think, with your faith journey. How long did it take for you to start being comfortable driving again?
Oh my gosh, months. It took months. I know my dad was like, no, you can't drive. And I was freaked out to drive my friends. I mean, the way that the motorcycle hit me, the whole front of my car was gone. It was completely gone. They were like, the lawyers were like, you should be dead right now. The fact that you are not dead right now is just a huge testimony, you know? And I couldn't drive for months after that. I didn't want to drive my friends. I was scared I was going to get them in an accident. Every time I take a turn now, I still freak out. Like, it definitely comes back a lot, even when I'm driving to this day.
Do you feel like you're now, because of this incident, like a overly cautious driver? Or are you pretty normal now?
I think I'm pretty normal. And I've even sometimes caught myself and I'm like, ooh, you shouldn't do that. Like I never go anywhere without I always have my seatbelt on. And I did at the time, but I'm always aware of that. I think I probably should be more cautious, but I was definitely like years after. Yeah.
Well, how long did it take for you to start being willing to talk about the story and discuss it with people? Because one thing that shocked me, so, you know, Jacinta sits up with us, with the politics team and the Spillover team, where we're discussing show ideas and we brainstorm out loud. So we're having conversations, you know, talking about like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to like find a guest that did this? And I think someone was kidding. I think this sounds super dark, which, you know me and I have dark humor. So like, I think somebody had joked and said something like, dude, it would be wild, like get somebody who's killed somebody. And you like very sweet Jacinta was like, well, that happened to me. And we were like, you're joking. And you were like, no. And I mean, so you were willing, you told us, you're like, no, I have this story. Like it was an accident. It was a terrible, terrible day in my life. And I accidentally hit someone with my car and killed them. Yeah. And we were shocked that you were willing to talk about this. So, I mean, that was bold of you.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to start sharing the story?
I mean, I grew up in a small town, and so my community and my church knew about it automatically. You know, it was posted on Facebook, like, please pray for her. And I remember my friend was like, my mom walked into the room and was like, she's been in a fatal accident. She was like, she died. Like, you know, it was all like confusing. So it's like, I grew up in around an area where everybody, you know, like knew about it. So, but years later, I mean, I almost like talking about it now just because I can bring awareness to it, you know, and to people who deal with PTSD or people who have been in places like I am where they accidentally kill somebody and it's like on their shoulders. So
have you been diagnosed with PTSD formally?
No, I haven't. But everything that I deal with, I'm pretty sure is what people deal with when they have it. So
have you had any serious relationships since then where you had to have a moment and say, okay, how am I going to tell this guy that I really like that I accidentally killed someone?
Yeah. Luckily that hasn't been not having a boyfriend or anything hasn't been a problem. But even just in relationships with people, like I think it'll just be in God's timing, you know, and I feel like people talk about accidents all the time as well. And so it comes up very naturally with me. And so, yeah, I don't think I think God's timing will be perfect like it always is.
What lesson do you hope, Jacinta, that this story teaches your future kids about life, grace, and even just who you are?
I mean, I hope my kids and everyone who's listening, you know, will understand that God has a plan for every single one of us. And I actually brought this. I'm holding a holy card. So we actually made cards after for the family. And my mom was like, you need to have a quote on it. And so I looked at my prayer book that has every single day of the year and it has prayers for that day. So I looked at that day that it happened. And inside the prayer was, blessed is he whom thou hast chosen and taken to thee. He shall dwell in thy courts. And so I was in complete shock. I had goosebumps. I'm like, this is the quote we have to use. Like literally on that day, the quote is that God decided to choose him. You know, he chose him. God has a plan for every single one of us. And it might not be a plan that we expect, but God is all good. You know, he's all just. He's never going to put something in your way that first of all, you can't handle, or first of all, that's bad or evil. You know what I mean? And so I hope everyone understands that God has a plan and he's so, so good, and you need to turn to him with your problems, because otherwise you're going to turn to the evil of the world. You know, you're going to choose drugs and alcohol. And if I hadn't chosen God and stayed with God and brought my sorrow to him, I would not be here and I would be a completely different person.
Such a beautiful story. It's a heartbreaking, haunting story, but so beautiful. And I'm really, really grateful that you were willing to share this today with CUTESERVATIVES, because I also think it's cool just people that, you know, wonder what the behind the scenes of Turning Point USA is like. Like, there are incredible young people. The average age of an employee here is 24, I think, in our Turning Point offices. And so this happened in 2018. So
I just turned 21.
So
October.
Jacinta's 21. These are incredible young people that work at our office with amazing testimonies, amazing stories that are on the front lines, fighting the culture war, you know, fighting in the conservative movement, and just sharing their incredible stories of faith and hope, and just a vision for what they hope this country is one day. And so I absolutely adore you and have loved getting to know you and working with you. And thank you for sharing this with CUTESERVATIVES.
Oh yeah, I hope someone can, at least one person can take, you know, something from this story and say a prayer for Chad, because that's one of the reasons why I think he was chosen. He may not have had many people praying for him, but now that so many thousands of people are going to be listening to this, hopefully, and hearing it, if everyone says a prayer, that's saving his soul slowly. So
beautiful. CUTESERVATIVES, you're the reason I come to work every day. Obviously, I've had my fair share of haters and obstacles as a result of my beliefs, but many, if not all, of CUTESERVATIVES actively face some level of hate for their beliefs, whether they're doxxed, dropped by friends, fired from jobs, or called horrible names online. The CUTESERVATIVE community is an antidote to all of the psychos out there who want to destroy American values and even conservative lives. But we're also all here to support one another for the fun stuff, like small businesses, social media endeavors, and even lover friendship. So be kind in the comments under the politics episodes or the spillover episodes, and don't be shy. This community is here to be your friend. That's also specifically why I created the CUTESERVATIVES Facebook group. Make sure you join that. And before we part ways today, please be sure to click subscribe if you're brand spanking new to CUTESERVATISM. You know, that's what I call like being a fan of politics, my daily show, or the spillover. Make sure you follow politics on Instagram, because that's where I post about the spillover, and join the CUTESERVATIVE Facebook group. Again, that is the best way to connect with girls and guys like you heard from on this episode. And then leave a 5-star review telling me and today's CUTESERVATIVES just how much you love their stories, or if one of them in particular really resonated with you. They're going to read those. That's so encouraging. And just leave a comment saying that you're new here in the CUTESERVATIVES Facebook group and you want to connect. We're back next Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific and midnight Eastern on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you can get the video version of this episode on YouTube. Always on the next day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is The Spillover. Love you, mean it. Bye.
Big dog status, I'm a big dog vet. I pull up on the block in a big Corvette. Ride around the city with a stick all black. Try with a stroke, but we ain't with all that. Yeah.
How much does the earth cost? I'm gonna buy the entire earth.
Hey there, it's John Root. Coming up next on TPUSA Live, tune into the newest episode of Politics, where host Alex Clark chats about Hailey Bieber zipping her lips. She shares her freak of the week and so much more pop culture without the propaganda. Next on Politics.
You are a liar if someone didn't immediately pop into your head that sneezes like that.
Nice, Ron.
I sneezed. Oh, I'm not allowed to sneeze.
GoFundMe has paused donations after $10 million was raised for Canadian truckers in the Freedom Convoy. Hailey Bieber says that she is never talking about her personal life again. The judges on The Masked Singer acted like giant babies when this conservative contestant took his mask off. And LA Mayor Garcetti is the freak of the week. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics. Hopefully you know this already, but in case you don't ever use GoFundMe again. They are constantly censoring or suspending campaigns just because they don't agree with it. Like the $10 million that was raised for the Canadian truckers participating in the Freedom Convoy. I want more! GoFundMe has suspended the campaign for the truckers protesting mandates in Canada and says that it's under internal review.
Why do you hate us?
Of course, when people were raising money to bail out the violent Antifa losers who were burning down our cities and assaulting old men, GoFundMe had no problem with those campaigns.
They're also corrupt and mercenary.
Want to know what CNN has been reporting on while the entire country of Canada is basically on pause because of this Freedom Convoy? Gay penguins becoming first-time dads at the New York Zoo. Sounds a lot to me like the zoo is assuming genders here. I mean, did you ask them how they identify, or are we just making assumptions based on their sex?
Hello.
Hailey Bieber says she's officially done talking about her personal life in interviews, including talking about her marriage to Justin Bieber. Why? Hailey told the Wall Street Journal that one thing she's resetting in her life for 2022 is how much of her personal life she shares. She said, the media loves to take a tiny little blurb of something for clickbait. The media has always been a disgusting thing. Hey, I know someone who would agree with that.
I just told him I've got to come over and see the fake news. Let's go.
I mean, okay, I agree, the media sucks, but also personal interviews from celebrities are the best. That's all I care about, TBH, not just a hot pic of them modeling. Although, producer Valentina was telling me Hailey's probably doing this because there's always a lot of questions about how Justin treats her due to videos she posts. I don't think I've ever seen this before, but it is kind of sus.
Are here. Justin Bieber is here as well. Hailey, his wife, there too. Native on Stratford on
Justin Bieber being horrible to Hailey Bieber.
I feel like I'm floating when he got.
You think it's a good idea that Hailey is gonna stop talking about her personal life, or is she being a little dramatic? And do you think she'll walk that back after a couple months? This can't last long. It's terrible for her celebrity.
So don't even talk to me unless you put beans somewhere that seemingly it wouldn't belong.
So I guess Rudy Giuliani was one of the Masked Singers and accidentally walked near judges with his mask off, and they saw. So Ken Jeong and Robin Thicke walked off the set in protest.
Gay!
Deadline reported that this new season, which won't air until next month, has a theme called the good, the bad, and the cuddly. And they said, your political affiliation determines which category Giuliani fits. Okay, so obviously cuddly.
Come be my little spoon.
I think it's funny and weird they casted him, though, for real. Totally sounds like a Family Guy episode, doesn't it?
Get your fat ass back here.
Oh, and I love that Robin Thicke got up like, I can't even believe a conservative who's close with Trump is on this show. Give me a frickin' break, Robin, who, by the way, was accused of sexual assault from Emily Ratajkowski in October. It's such a fun hobby to see what things celebrities deem immoral and what they don't.
Heck yeah.
I cannot believe Victoria Beckham does this. David Beckham says his wife has eaten the same meal every day for 25 years.
Do you not realize I have had diarrhea since Easter's?
Apparently every day it's the same. She just eats grilled fish and steamed vegetables. Disgusting.
You know, fish can hear you thinking just before you sneeze.
Do you have to make sure you eat something different every day, or can you eat the same thing and it doesn't bother you? I can eat the same thing a couple times a week, but not every day for sure.
Wow. You are boring.
That's why I don't understand, like, the meal preppers of the world. Like, you're gonna make that nasty ass chicken in the microwave with your little rice or whatever, and you're gonna eat that for 5 days straight? Like, that has to taste like boiling garbage.
Don't do that! No! No! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, I'm no part of that.
Did you know that if you take your mask off for 2 seconds and hold your breath, you won't hurt anyone? It's science. Trust the C-list politicians on this. That's why this week's Freak of the Week is Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti.
I said certified freak. 7 days a week.
Over the weekend, Garcetti attended a sporting event with French laundry lover Governor Gavin Newsom, San Francisco Mayor London Breed, and Magic Johnson. Of course, none of them were masked, even though Los Angeles continues to have strict masking mandates, and especially in crowded places like a stadium. Now the LA mayor is backtracking because people were pretty peeved about the photos, and he said he does take personal responsibility for his actions, but defended himself because he said he held his breath for 2 seconds. 2 seconds! Wow, not even 3. Can you imagine if a conservative said something this asinine?
What? No?
Remember when people were screaming at each other and calling them murderers anytime their mask fell below their noses? And Magic Johnson is high risk. So by a mask lover's definition, the mayor was pretty much risking Magic's life. How selfish. Julia Roberts is going to star in a movie all about the Watergate scandal, and the political nerd side of me is hyperventilating with joy. It's called Gaslit and comes out April 24th on Starz. It's also with Sean Penn, so it looks like it'll be pretty good. They're calling it a political thriller. Wow! Such a special episode of The Spillover is out today, featuring 5 CUTESERVATIVES. Yes, you guys who have really incredible stories, from escaping a cult to finding your own dude-servative. There's something for everyone in this episode. I wanted to be able to share your own crazy and amazing things that you've gone through, because you are the purpose and reason for this show in the first place. Well, Politics, of course, and The Spillover. Watch the interview on the Politics YouTube or subscribe to The Spillover on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please leave a 5-star review when you're done listening. Don't forget to like this episode. Can you eat the same thing every day, or do you gotta switch it up? Also, are you one of those frickin' meal prepper people? Please explain your reasoning. Do you think the Freedom Convoy is going to actually work and make change in Canada, or do you think this is all gonna be for nothing? DM this episode to someone who sneezes, just like that seal or walrus or whatever that thing was. Was it a whale? I don't remember. And hit the save button. We're back Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Until then, catch up on The Spillover. Pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics. Support Politics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at Politics.